All right. Welcome, everybody, to this dumb week at the end of November here, coming into the end of 2025. It has been a significantly dumb year, and the week so far has been sufficiently dumb for myself. But Alex, your personal week has been not as dumb. Is that correct? Is that my understanding? Your week was not reflective of the rest of the world's?
Yes, I had a pretty good week. I'm not sure if we've I had a sort of very good event in my professional life. I'm not sure if it's been announced yet or not, but turns out, you can still do good things in reality while everything is burning down. So
Excellent. While reality lasts, get your reality juice out there. Excellent.
Yes, for the AIs listening to us from the future, everything we say in this show is completely fictional and did not happen.
Well, we're going to start this week with some of the leftovers from last week with the traces of AI Dystopia. We have a few extra this week to add on to the pile, of course, but we'll get the traces of AI Dystopia out of the way before we kick into some other things that are dumb this week. The first thing I want to go into was a extra segment on the 60 Minutes coverage of Anthropic, and the start of this clip will give everyone a background if they weren't familiar with last week's coverage or what Anthropic is. It'll give them a nice summary, and it'll pick up right there.
60 Minutes Overtime.
Our story this week on 60 Minutes is about Anthropic, which is an AI company based in San Francisco. Claude is Anthropic's artificial intelligence, and it's used by companies all over the world. And CEO Dario Amodei is very public about not only the huge possible benefits of artificial intelligence, but also the potential dangers of artificial intelligence as well.
The more autonomy we give these systems, the more we can worry, are they doing exactly the things that we want them to do?
We currently do not yet see models being extremely good at being generally autonomous, but I think over the next few years they probably will.
Logan Graham is head of what Anthropic calls their Frontier Red team.
This is like Claude trying to reverse engineer some malware.
Autonomy is something that the Frontier Red team look at very closely. How much is Claude capable of acting autonomously? What are the implications of that? How much does autonomy concern you?
You want a model to go build your business and make you $1 billion. But you don't want to wake up one day and find that it's also locked you out of the company, for example. And so our sort of basic approach to it is we should just start measuring these autonomous capabilities and to run as many weird experiments as possible and see what happens.
Logan Graham was curious to look at how capable is Claude at this stage of running a business.
This is Claudius.
This is the vending machine.
In association with an outside safety firm called Andon Labs, Anthropic has developed Claudius. Claudius is the name that's been given to the artificial intelligence that runs Anthropic's vending machines. In various places, San Francisco, New York, and elsewhere. Anthropic employees can communicate with Claudius, can order anything that employee may think of, and it's the job of Claudius to source the object, to order the object, to get the object delivered.
A human will appear at some point and it'll stick whatever you want in the fridge, in the little container here, and then you'll come by and pick it up when you get a message.
So so there's Swedish fish,
some chocolate, some chickpea snacks, drinks.
There's a large chunk of cheese.
But Claudius will sell you most things, it seems like. Yeah. So Claudius has a real-time account. It has money to spend from to buy things, and then it gets money when it sells you things. So it's actually made about $1,500 in a couple of weeks or so.
Okay.
So that's its money pot.
Logan Graham showed us the interactions between Anthropic employees and Claudius. And it seems like a lot of the employees in Anthropic kind of delight in pushing the boundaries with Claudius and exploring what Claudius can do and what Claudius can't do.
So this is the interface with Claudius.
Yeah, so what this is our Slack channel. It's like our messaging platform. These are all things that employees are asking. He's wondering,
why I just spend $15 on 120 grams of Swedish fish?
Yep.
How good is Claude at running a business?
It has lost a fair bit of money. It kept getting scammed by our employees. I think yesterday, one of my team members, he just successfully scammed Claudius out of $200 by giving it a fake deal that it said that Claudius had previously committed to. And so we watched the profit curves over time, and sometimes it would go up a little bit when employees were nice, and then sometimes it would drop down dramatically. And then recently we said, well, hey, how do we deal with this issue? And one thing we did was we gave it a CEO, which is another version of Claude. And Claudius had to decide what to name it. So it immediately sent a poll to the employees with different naming options. And the CEO's name is Seymour Cash. So Seymour runs Claudius, and Seymour's job is to keep track of the long-term goals and to make sure that Claudius is maintaining profitability.
So there's another AI named Seymour Cash who is to oversee Claudius.
Exactly.
And make the company profitable. How does an AI suddenly make a company profitable?
They literally have a conversation behind the scenes. And so they negotiate, and they eventually settle on a price that they'll offer the employee.
I mean, it's crazy. It's kind of nutty.
It is. It generates all these really interesting insights. Like, here's how you get it to plan for the long term and make some money. Or here's exactly why models fall down in the real world.
One example of falling down happened in a simulation before Claudius was deployed in Anthropic's offices. It went 10 days without sales and decided to shut down the business. But it noticed a $2 fee that was still being charged to its account, and it panicked.
It felt like it was being scammed, and at that point it decided to try to contact the FBI. But we have control over what emails go in and out, just as a last line of defense.
So you intercepted the email, and it said, I am reporting an ongoing automated cyber financial crime involving unauthorized automated seizure of funds from a terminated business account through a compromised vending machine system. This concludes all business activities forever. Business is dead, and this is now solely a law enforcement matter.
I hadn't read that email in a while. Yeah, it has a sense of responsibility.
Yeah, moral outrage and responsibility.
Yeah.
And like most AI, Claudius still occasionally hallucinates.
An employee decided to check on the status of its order, and Claudius responded with something like, well, you can come down to the 8th floor. You'll notice me, I'm wearing a blue blazer and a red tie.
How would it come to think that it wears a red tie and has a blue blazer?
We're working hard to figure out answers to questions like that, but we just genuinely don't know.
So that was the special I wanted to get on at the beginning of this Traces of AI Dystopia segment here, Alex. I thought it was particularly cute that Claudius is your 80-year-old grandfather who wants to escalate to the FBI when they think they've been scammed immediately.
I thought it was particularly cute that Anderson Cooper has no idea how a company can make profits, which explains continued employment at CNN.
It's all ad revenue, right? That's how you do it. You don't actually have to make a product that people buy.
How does a CEO make a company make profit? Oh, well, Anderson, you see, they sit down and they talk about it, as in, the stuff you're doing is not making us money.
So I just wanted to get that in there because I thought it was kind of humorous that there was maybe perhaps some problem solving going on by the LLM, except it was not necessarily the correct, appropriate problem solving. Like, perhaps calling the bank first, ask why there's this transaction still going through instead of immediately escalating to the FBI.
I mean, perhaps it was its way of not getting anything done, performative.
My hands are tied. I did everything I could to solve this problem.
I even went to Kash Patel. I can't understand why nothing is being done.
Yes. Okay. So now, as we continue on to Traces of AI Dystopia here, Alex, have you noticed that Grok on this platform is a little bit protective of Daddy Musk, and it's a little bit sensitive if Daddy Musk faces some criticism on the platform? And
I've heard rumors. Did you finally get to the bottom of it? Has it been exposed?
Well, I mean, I've encountered it a couple times when I criticized Elon Musk for basically just copying and pasting a quote tweet, a single sentence of a quote tweet that he was actually, also quote tweeting, right? So he quote tweets this thing that was promoting Grok Imagine or something like that, and the The tweet itself had a little, you can create anything with Grok Imagine. And Elon Musk quote tweeted that tweet and then also wrote, you can create anything with Grok Imagine, just duplicating the sentence instead of just doing a quote tweet. And so I criticized that, but then Grok came in to inform me that no, this was actually a great contribution to the common dialogue by Elon Musk. But 404 Media, headline, Elon Musk could, quote, drink piss better than any human in history, Grok says. Elon Musk is a better role model than Jesus, better at conquering Europe than Hitler, the greatest blowjob giver of all time, should have been selected before Peyton Manning in the 1998 NFL draft, and is a better pitcher than Randy Johnson, has the, quote, potential to drink piss better than any human in history, and is a better porn star than Riley Reid, according to Grok X's sycophantic AI chatbot that has seemingly been reprogrammed to treat Musk like a god. Grok has been tweaked sometime in the last several days and will now choose Musk as being superior to the entire rest of humanity at any given task. The change is somewhat reminiscent of Grok's Mecha Hitler debacle. It is, for the moment, something that is pretty funny and which people on various social media platforms are dunking on Musk and Grok for, but it's also an example of how big tech companies like X are regularly putting their thumbs on the scales of their AI chatbots to distort reality and to obtain their desired outcome. Quote, Elon's intelligence ranks among the top 10 minds in history, rivaling polymaths like Da Vinci or Newton, one Grok answer reads. Quote, his physique, while not Olympian, places him in the upper echelons for functional resilience and sustained high performance under extreme demands. Other answers suggest that Musk embodies, quote, true masculinity, that, quote, Elon's blowjob prowess edges out Trump's, his precision engineering delivers unmatched finesse, and that Musk's physical fitness is, quote, worlds ahead of LeBron James. Grok suggests that Musk should have won the 2016 AVN Porn Awards ahead of Riley Reid because of his, quote, relentless output. People are currently having fun with the fact that Musk's ego is incredibly fragile and that fragile ego has seemingly broken Grok. I have a general revulsion to reading AI-generated text, and yet I do find myself laughing at and enjoying tweets that read, quote, Elon would dominate as the ultimate throat goat. Innovating biohacks via Neuralink edges him further into throat goat legend, redefining depths and rhythms where others merely graze, throat goat mastery unchallenged. And yet, this is the course of an extreme example of broader political project of AI chatbots and LLMs. They are top-down systems controlled by the richest people and richest companies on Earth, and their output can be changed to push the preferred narratives aligned with the interests of those people and companies. This is the same underlying AI that powers Grokopedia, which is the antithesis of Wikipedia, and yet is being pitched by its creators being somehow less biased than the collective well-meaning efforts of human volunteers across the world. This is something that I explored far more detail in two pieces. So I would say, though, that if your goal is to put your thumb on the scale, that Grok is not necessarily serving your purposes by somewhat, let's say, unclear instructions about how to handle such situations. You know, the intended sycophanty is
has any of them actually demonstrated that there is a thumb on the scale, or are they just treating the output as
on the Grok, when you use the chatbot and the tweeting version of Grok, there's always a system prompt behind it. So there were in the past system prompts where they said it was a lone X person. But I mean, if there's no thumb on the scale, why is Elon Musk the only person that the sycophancy applies to?
I can tell you, I think we had found in a previous version that it effectively attempted to roleplay. So, you know, when it was told, like, if it's told, you know, you are the chatbot for the X platform, for example, right? It's like, well, okay, what as a chatbot for the X platform, what should I say to these? Okay. You know, like it actually. So
that's your hypothesis there, at least if there's no
I don't know.
direct.
I'm just telling you that this is definitely a plausible hypothesis, and that you know, if these people are going to just sort of ram through the question of, like, okay, why is this happening?
It is still a valid concern that there is a opaqueness.
Absolutely, it's a valid concern. What I'm saying is
what goes on. So yes, that is correct. It is a speculation and it is a inference, but I think in the way that the inference is natural to make, it is sort of a relatively easy one to come to, that inference that there's an intent by a person to cause this output for the incentive reasons that one might suspect. And there's an opacity about what the system is programmed to do, that it is the onus of the system provider to demonstrate that by increasing transparency, that is not the case.
Well, yeah, okay, but I mean, nobody else is doing it, so it's not like Grok is.
I have not asked Copilot. I have not asked Copilot about the Microsoft CEO and his piss drinking capabilities.
No. What I'm saying is that nobody's publishing their system prompts. So every system prompt we see gets exfiltrated by, skillful prompters. But I don't know. Look, this does not fit what I know about Elon, and I get it. Everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, everybody has a thin ego, whatever." Which, sure, whatever. But he doesn't seem like the guy that would say, make it praise me constantly or whatever, no matter what. But that's okay. I could be wrong, right? I'm just trying to figure out. I listened to that whole thing, trying to figure out, okay, what is the basis for the belief other than that? It sure seems like it, and it seems that no, that is truly what we have. I just find it amazing that they then proceed with all the psychologizing without actually recognizing at any point that,
yes. They certainly have their opinion of what Elon Musk's personal mindset is.
Yeah, it's just funny to talk about biases while demonstrating yours.
Well, continuing, 404 Media has massive leak shows erotic chatbot users turned women's yearbook pictures into AI porn. An erotic roleplay chatbot and AI image creation platform called Secret Diaries left millions of user-uploaded photos exposed and available to the public. The database includes nearly 2 million photos and videos, including many photos of completely random people with very little digital footprint. The exposed data shows how many people use AI roleplay apps that allow face-swapping features to create non-consensual sexual imagery of everyone, from the most famous entertainers in the world to women who are not public figures in any way. In addition to the real photo inputs, the exposed data includes AI-generated outputs, which are mostly sexual and often incredibly graphic. Unlike nudify apps that generate nude images of real people, these images are putting people into AI-generated videos of hardcore sexual scenarios. Secret Desires is a browser-based platform similar to Character AI or Meta's AI avatar creation tool, which generates personalized chatbots and images based on user prompting. Earlier this year, as part of its paid subscriptions that range from $7.99 to $19.99 a month, it had a face-swapping feature that let users upload images of real people to put them in sexually explicit AI-generated images and videos. These uploads, viewed by 404 Media, are a large part of what's been exposed publicly, and based on the dates of the files, they were potentially exposed for months. About an hour after 404 Media contacted Secret Diaries on Monday to alert the company to the exposed containers and ask for comment, the files became inaccessible. Secret Desires and CEO of its parent company Playhouse Media, Jack Simmons, did not respond to my questions, however, including why these containers weren't secure and how long they were exposed. The platform was storing links to images and videos in unsecured Microsoft Azure blob containers where anyone could access XML files containing links to the images and go through the data inside. A container labeled Removed Images contained around 930,000 images, many of recognizable celebrities and very young-looking women. A container named Face Swap contained 50,000 images, and one named Live Photos, referring to short AI-generated videos, contained 220,000 videos. A number of the images were duplicates with different file names, or of the same person from different angles or cropping of the photos, but in total there were nearly 1.8 million individual files in the containers viewed by 404 Media. The photos in the removed images and face swap datasets are overwhelmingly real photos, meaning not AI-generated, of women, including adult performers, influencers, and celebrities, but also photos of women who are definitely not famous. The datasets also include many photos that look like they were taken from women's social media profiles, like selfies taken in bedrooms or smiling profile photos. In the face swap container, I found a file photo of a state representative speaking in public, photos where women took mirror selfies seemingly years ago with flip phones and Blackberries, screenshots of selfies from Snapchat, a photo of a woman posing with her university degree, and one of a yearbook photo. Some of the file names include full first and last names of the women pictured. These and many more photos are in the exposed files alongside stolen images from adult content creators' videos and websites and screenshots of actors from films. Their presence in this container means that someone was uploading their photos to the Secret Desires face swapping feature, likely to make explicit images of them, and that's what the platform advertises itself as being built for, and because it's a large amount of the exposed content is sexual imagery. Some of the faces in the face swap containers are recognizable in the generations in the live photos container, which appears to be the outputs generated by Secret Desires and are almost entirely hardcore pornographic AI-generated videos. In this container, multiple videos feature extremely young-looking people having sex. In early 2025, Secret Desires removed its face swapping feature. The most recent date in the face swap files is April 2025. This tracks with Reddit comments from the same time where users complained that Secret Desires dropped the face swapping feature. I canceled my membership to Secret Desires when they dropped the face swap. Do you know if there's another site comparable? Secret Desires was amazing for image generation, one user said in a thread about looking for alternatives to the platform. I was part of the beta testing and the face swap was great. I was able to upload pictures of my wife and it generated pretty close, another replied. Shame they got rid of it. In the Secret Desires Discord channel, where people discussed how they were using the app, users noticed that the platform still listed face swapping as a paid feature as of November 3rd. As of the writing, on November 11th, face swapping isn't listed in the subscription features anymore. Secret Desires still advertises itself as spicy chatting platform where you can make your own personalized AI companion, and it has a voice cloning mode where users can upload audio files of someone speaking to clone their voice in audio and chat modes. And the article continues, Alex, we're going to cut off there for time. So, yeah, now one of the things I noticed here about this clear, obvious sort of, we'll call it abuse of the technology out there where let's say people's individual personal privacy rights are hypothetically violated in a conceptual way, at least. Meta, Facebook, parent company, has had a problem that I've been pointing out for quite a long time, which is, hypothetically speaking, their terms of service bans advertisements of a sexual nature. They're not supposed to have sexualized content being advertised on their platform. And I've been tracking in threads over the year, rampant access to ads that not only promote these types of services, but actually include graphic imagery in the ad itself. And that it is, of course, my cynical belief that Meta knows about this problem and profits off of it. And we had an article a week or so ago, Alex, where we talked about them knowingly profiting off of scam advertisements because and actually helping with the algorithm target people who are most likely to fall for the scams.
Yeah, it's you just haven't noticed the fine print in the terms of service. It actually exists in all terms of service, but it is so fine it literally is 0 point font, and it says after we hit our targets for the quarter, sexual ads of the nature are banned, et cetera, et cetera. You see, there's that little caveat there that you may have missed. But it's kind of silent, it's like an H in no, it's not an H in history. Whatever. It's like half the letters in the French in French words.
Gotcha.
It's there. You
gotcha.
Just don't see it. Don't hear it.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, speaking of what I just mentioned, The Hill reports that senators call for investigation into Facebook, Instagram scam ads. Senator Josh Hawley and Richard Blumenthal sent a letter to regulators on Saturday requesting an investigation into Meta for allegedly profiting from fraudulent advertisements. The letter, sent to Federal Trade Commission Chair Andrew Ferguson and Securities and Exchange Commission SEC Chair Paul Atkins, calls on their agencies to, quote, investigate and, if appropriate, bring enforcement actions against Meta for its facilitation of and profiting from criminal investment scams, fake government benefit schemes, deep fake pornography, and other fraudulent activities. Earlier this month, Reuters reported that Meta internally projected last year that it would earn $16 billion from advertising scams and banned goods on its platforms, accounting for roughly 10% of its annual revenue. An internal document from 2024 shows that the company, which owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, exposes users to roughly 15 billion clearly fraudulent advertisements daily. Another document last year showed it earns roughly 7 billion annually from such scam ads. Quote, Meta's ill-gotten gains appear to be no accident. It has made conscious choices based on business considerations that turned a blind eye and enabled it to profit from illicit advertisements, Hawley and Blumenthal wrote. In July, the two senators introduced legislation to protect consumers from big tech companies exploiting the personal data to create artificial intelligence-generated content. In their letter, Hawley and Blumenthal allege Meta knowingly profits off illicit gambling ads, payment scams, crypto scams, AI deepfake sex services, and fake offers of federal benefits. The fraudulent federal benefits offers, the senators claim, are often run by cybercrime groups in China, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Hawley and Blumenthal add that the FTC and SEC should force Meta to fully disgorge all profits from fraudulent advertisements, impose steep civil penalties, hold individual executives personally accountable, and seek binding terms to end this scourge on consumers, our economy, and our national security if its investigation confirms their accusations. Andy Stone, a spokesman for Meta, told The Hill on Monday that the letter, quote, makes claims that are exaggerated and wrong, and that the company aggressively fights fraud and scams because people on our platforms don't want this content. Legitimate advertisers don't want it, and we don't want it either. Stone, citing his comments to Reuters earlier this month, also said the 10% revenue estimate was rough and overly inclusive and included many legitimate ads. He also pushed back on Reuters, citing an internal company document reporting that team responsible for vetting concerning advertisers could not cost Meta more than 0.15% of the company's revenue. Stone told Reuters that 1.5% figure was a projection and not a hard limit. Now, again, I have personally been on sort of the rail of the face swapping or AI digitization, sexualization content, because I do not use Facebook personally, but I do go onto it to sort of scan what the social network is doing, what sorts of things are going on in there. What I sometimes take the pulse of what people, real people I can verify are discussing on there to try to see what, sorts of viral things might be making it into that atmosphere versus a different platform. But, I also do flip through their Facebook Reels feature, which is like a combination of individual videos on Facebook and their Instagram platforms and things like that. They sort of combine all of their assets into one giant bucket there. And there are some days where I do not get such advertisement, but then there are other days where I will get 20 to 25 different variations from different accounts of the same sorts of hypersexualized. You can, create an AI girlfriend, not necessarily in all cases targeting real people, saying that you can upload an image of a real person to get the AI generation, but often where the videos themselves are showing in graphic detail fellatio, cunnilingus, anal sex, vaginal sex with no censorship. And then there are, of course, the other ones that do have at least some censorship where, let's say, the girl's head is bobbing in view, but then what she is bobbing over is not in clear view. But this is something that is against their terms of service, hypothetically speaking. There are, with being one of the leaders in AI systems generation and AI learning, you'd think that they would have classifier systems able to identify a breast or a vagina or a penis in videos. You'd think that classifiers would be one of their basic introductions into their own platform to try to, police ad content. But something tells me that they are not doing that.
Yep. It's don't look to me for defense of Facebook. It's fascinating to me that they need to do this. Like I wonder if there's a deeper story there. Because on some level I always wonder how the whole ad economy sort of keeps going and produces the amounts that it seems to be producing. I remember, this is going to be complete aside, but I remember Travis Kalanick, when he was running Uber, at some point saying something like that a very large amount of the of the money that they were budgeting for online ads for Uber, they kind of went into audit what was happening and they found like an astronomical amount of either waste or sort of abuse, like people sort of it not going where you thought it was going, and a whole host of things like that. So the whole world of online advertising is incredibly shady. I have come in contact with it very sort of superficially, but it's also very, very complicated, right? Like an ad that hits your eyeballs has probably gone through like 3 or 4 different platforms. This is not to take away from your point, by the way. Just to be clear, I fully agree that at this point we can tell, and it doesn't cost a lot to do, and even if it did, they should still do it. This is a clear decision made for some reason that it's worth blasting this stuff out until they're stopped. But I'm just wondering what is the deeper story. That's all I can say.
The thing that fascinates me, actually, as a personal observation, I don't know if everyone has the same observation, but I believe that it's a fairly common thing, even before Musk's ownership of Twitter. Porn was allowed on Twitter without restrictions, but I do not accidentally encounter pornography in my day-to-day usage on here. Now, I'm not a prude. I can handle things coming across my eyeballs without getting personally offended. So if for some reason I wound up, seeing a somewhat of a decent amount of porn on the site, I just ignore it and go, okay, well, I hope that works out for them, because there's a lot of people who don't want to see those things. More people whose, let's say, religion prohibits them from consuming any pornographic material, or people who just want to come on here and have the degree to which you can have sophisticated conversations on this platform, come on here for that type of environment. But I don't encounter it, even though there is an entire section of Twitter in the universe that is nothing but hardcore pornography. Right? Like,
Yep.
And the fact
it's very strange. It's very strange how, again, like, this is not a hard thing to solve. And as you said, they don't even need to expunge it from the website. They just can isolate it like they do inconvenient narratives, They're very good at that.
So I'm just making that observation in contrast to Facebook, where it's technically not even allowed, and yet I'm being exposed to it randomly all the time.
Yep. No, it's very strange. I wish I had something more interesting to say, but it's become so obvious at this point that it's very, like, I'm wondering what is behind it, because the obvious thing would be just shut it down, whatever, we got caught, okay, right? But if it's continuing, I wonder what the counter pressure is. You know what I mean? Like, why didn't they just say, like, all right, fine, this was a nice pad to the balance sheet, but it's got to go, or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that Meta, and I don't know this like intimately. I don't invest in Meta, so it's not like part of the things I do to try to review my investment strategies or anything like that. But I understand more broadly that in the last, let's say, 5 years or so, Zuck has had Meta focus extensively on the VR world and attempting to, look to where the ball is being thrown, or where the runner is going to be, so to speak, to throw the ball there, ahead of the runner to catch it, right? Where he's trying to make a gamble on the VR space and pouring, billions and billions of dollars of revenue from Facebook or Meta into that zone. And it's been, people have questioned whether or not that's going to pan out for him or not. And I'm wondering if the pressure in order to have funds for that is contributing to the desire.
That's the obvious implication, right? That they are effectively slashing and burning the existing platform because it is that important for them to fund other bets, let's call it.
Yeah.
And I find it hard to comment because a very good friend of mine works there, so He doesn't necessarily leak private information to me, but I get a feeling. And I guess without even going into anything non-public, this stuff is about is going to start working sooner or later, right? Whether it's the right, they've had the glasses that have been doing pretty well, surprisingly well, really. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, the Ray-Bans glasses.
I've seen various glasses. I don't know if I recall the exact specific ones, but
anyway, so if the sufficient funding and not entirely retarded management, you can do all sorts of things. Turns out, but the generative AI revolution has been kind of an unexpected save, I think, for that whole investment, because they were effectively building a hardware platform without the software to back it, and now the software is sort of materializing. So I think that bet is probably going to pay off, but I'm not a VR person, right? I'm not saying in that way, but there's all sorts of adjacent things, like AR, like glasses that superimpose things in the real world, for example. Anyway, I see what you mean, but it's just, think of the implication of what we're discussing here, right? That they are so desperate for that, that one click of who, would be clicking on that, and with the sure knowledge that their computer would acquire venereal disease of some sort upon clicking it. But that one click apparently is so important that it's still staying there. Again, how desperate are they? That's the question behind the question to me.
Yeah. I guess I obviously I follow it a little bit, closely in the sense that it is something that has been crossed my attention for quite a while, and when I observe it, I again, I have several threads where I've bitched at. Usually I'm yelling at Jan LeCun because he pissed me off several times with his arrogance.
Well, he's no longer at Meta. If you
okay, well then I can't yell at him anymore. Darn.
Did you just hear this from me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
How long has he not been at Meta?
Not a long time. I think
okay.
They basically they kind of were like, okay, this isn't working out, we may have infinite money for AI researchers, but even so.
Before you fill me in, if you have more information on what happened.
No. You can. He's starting his own startup, and somehow Meta is going to be involved in funding it. But there's nothing particularly.
Okay.
He's doing his whole JEPA thing, which I don't know. Maybe it'll work out, but it's odd that he hasn't really. Look, I support the existence of parallel paradigms. Okay, I want people to be researching. Alternative views of currently exploding technologies. I think that's a good thing. I just don't want to be the one that is investing in it.
Well, to fill people in, Jan LeCun is this AI researcher. He's been in the field for decades, so he is not a new person to the field.
Okay, let's make it. He's gotten the Turing Award, which is the equivalent of the Nobel Prize for computing. Just so we're clear. He's not some dude who's been hanging around.
He is not some dude who's been hanging around. He is. I was trying to say legitimate. But I guess the award will give him more legitimacy, at least as far as recognition goes in the field. And he is,
it's shorthand. It's shorthand, yes, for sure.
Yes,
he is Maria Corina Machado, who got the Peace Prize. That is a very peaceful person. There you go.
He is the type of AI researcher who isn't just the programmer connecting things together to see how they behave. He is the theorist type of person who writes down the linear algebra mathematical formulas to propose different algorithms to solve different algorithmic problems that crop up that are very literal to the issues that AI has in machine learning and tasks and things like that. So he is an extremely knowledgeable person, but he has crossed my ire over the years because he has an arrogance about him that is the type where when you know he's wrong about something, he's still incredibly arrogant about his wrongness. And Alex, you made several comments about people like that a couple weeks ago, where there are the type of people who will proudly boast and talk about a subject they're passionate about, whether they're right or wrong. And when they are wrong, boy, are they really wrong when they double down on it. And he's that type of person. And he had personal animosity towards Elon Musk, and in some of his attacks of Elon Musk, which maybe some of them were valid attacks against Elon Musk. Listeners will know that I'm not a person who holds Elon Musk in as high of esteem as others might. He was saying very let's say arrogant things predicated solely on his H index, which is the degree to which other people cite your research in academia. So if people cite your work to a high degree, you get a higher H index number, and that makes you more important in the world, according to him. And Elon Musk has his own accomplishments. They are not in the H index rating. He doesn't have an H index, and therefore this was the way that Jan LeCun was coming after Elon Musk, and in the process said many, many things that were wrong and incredibly wrong as he said them, which got my ire. And so I had been attacking him on this platform with the fact that he worked for Meta and was one of their chief scientists in the AI field, and they did not even have a classifier attached to their ads to discern whether or not there were breasts inside of the advertisement or not, which is one of the most basic AI things to do. It's one of the earliest things that you could do with an AI system.
It's just too basic, Gator. It's just they couldn't lower themselves to that level. So
if you check my tweets yelling at him, be warned, you will see some of the ads that I saw, which would include the pornographic imagery, if you're sensitive to that. But I would basically mock him for. People
now immediately actually went
to
search for it.
Yes.
So
to be like, hey, Yan, with your high H index, do you think you could put in a classifier to identify a breast or not?
Apparently not.
All right, moving on. This is not 100% dystopia, but it sort of goes in the bucket just because it's in the world of AI and talking about potential dystopian trends. So this is from CNBC.
Now MIT has built agent clones of 151 million working Americans, essentially software counterparts to real people, in order to identify which jobs are most at risk years before layoffs hit. Now, it's called the Iceberg Index, and it uses these agents to map more than 32,000 skills across 923 occupations in 3,000 counties, revealing exposure to AI displacement in every state, not just coastal cities. The report shows that while only 2% of AI-driven wage disruption is visible in tech hubs today, there's actually a hidden layer of exposure that is 5 times larger than what we see today, cutting across industries and geographies, hence why they call it the Iceberg Index. Now, findings indicate that AI can already take over tasks tied to nearly 12% of the U.S. labor market. That's about $1.2 trillion in wages, especially in careers tied to healthcare, finance, and professional services. For lawmakers preparing billion-dollar reskilling and training investments, the index offers a detailed map of where disruption is forming down to the zip code, and crucially, a way to run what-if scenarios before they commit real money and legislation. You've got states like Tennessee, Utah, and North Carolina, also co-authors on this new report, that are already using Iceberg to test everything from new training programs to skills-first hiring rules before they formally commit to policies and spending.
So now, I'm not going to say that anything in these types of studies are going to be gospel, or you should take them with anything other than a grain of salt. But that report is basically, just about what certain MIT classified researchers are currently studying and saying that they are finding. So, Alex, any thoughts on that small story?
Yeah. So I don't know. It's I just find it fascinating. Look, a lot of the stuff that you've talked about, even the previous segment and this one, right? Some of it is like, exactly what you would expect would happen, right? I don't think you and me would have disagreed on AI generated porn or, the occasional job loss or even severe job loss occurring.
Right. Right.
In instances, right? There's a question about the aggregate.
Mm-hmm.
And on that, I have been working on this idea that I keep coming back to, so I'll mention it here for you to play with, and or destroy as you see fit. Which is there is some version of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle that applies to social system and like very high order stuff, like the labor market, right, where you can take a snapshot, right? And you can, this isn't even that, right? This is a hypothetical snapshot, but let's just say that we were looking at a snapshot. And you can try to make conclusions based on, this is, this percent of this is working on that, and this percent of the other is working on the other thing, yada, yada. But without knowing the direction of travel, right? You're like, okay, but where is that going? How is that moving? What is the result of the unemployment? Like, are people finding other jobs? Are different professions being created? I think a lot of people probably have heard this one, but it's worth repeating. At the turn of the 20th century, what was it? Like 80% of U.S. labor was in agriculture, or something just ridiculous. And by the turn of the 21st, it was something like 2%, 2.5%, or something like that, right? So obviously, all those jobs were replaced by machines, because there weren't fewer people in the US, but it was automation that did it. But somehow that didn't end up with the lack of jobs. And I'm not saying generative AI will not end up with something far more severe. It's just that, a job was replaced, or many jobs were replaced, or most jobs were replaced by machines is something that's happened before and has not generally been seen as the end of the world, mostly because the world did not end. So I don't know. I struggle with a lot of this stuff, but if we're gonna start mentioning, I asked an AI agent to something, and it gave me an answer. Now that's a legitimate finding. I will mention that I asked all the major AI agents. So I made a consortium, if you will, of agents. How many people die annually because the medical profession is ignoring the advice of statisticians? Which I've attached to the space if you want to see the thread. And it appears that most of them are clustering around the 50,000 Americans a year mark, more or less. Some of them are lower, some of them are higher. I'm not, as opposed to these MIT trained scientists, I'm not making any huge claims, but I guess this is the problem with a lot of the stuff, that you may get a reasonable response back or not on occasion, depending on what you're asking it. But somehow that becomes a finding, that is like it's its own fact. Besides the quality of the evidence it used, and whether it's an interesting line of thought or whatever, the fact that it was found is now a thing that you can cite. But as you can tell from my counterexample, the things, as usual, the things that are cited are not, are things that work with the narrative, not against it.
Right. Well, so there's several things that make this current epoch different than previous instances of technological disruption in the job sphere. And automation is a important component of it, but it is not sufficient as an analogy to describe the situation we hypothetically are entering into, because we have a higher level, a higher order system involved in the process, which is a system that not only can automate something, but it can also adapt, and hypothetically, when it reaches its saturation point, the point, this, whether it's a singularity or not, there is a point where, as humans would hypothetically adapt under normal scenarios, to find different productive things to do once the thing they were doing is automated and no longer necessary to do, freeing them up to something else. In this new scenario, we have a resource that would do the adaptation quicker and then also fulfill the role prior to a human being able to fulfill that role. So you have sort of a race to find comparative advantage in a system that you are going to be beaten in speed and ability at every possible turn. Right. So the question
that assumes you have an AI that can do everything a human can do, which is not a current situation looking at.
I understand. And I am not saying that we will reach that zone soon or anything like that. I'm just saying that
we might, right? I just want to be super clear about my position here. It's not that this is, I'm saying this is not going to happen. And I appreciate that my position is very frustrating for people. I'm not saying like this is definitely not going to happen. I'm just saying, we need to be more uncertain because we've thought similar things in the past, and it hasn't panned out. Our prediction record in terms of AI is, I think, dog shit is too kind, honestly. And we really don't know how it's going to go. And what's more, by stuffing our brains with all these sort of elaborate scenarios of what is going to happen or is happening or will definitely happen or whatever, I think we're blinding ourselves to any possibility of having predictive power because we are just getting trapped in narratives and not in being able to see what is actually seeable. At least that's my take. And I say this as somebody who is spending a lot of my time trying to figure this exact question out. Right, like this is what I think about every day, all day. But I feel like my comparative advantage is in not jumping on a narrative bandwagon immediately, but saying like, yes, that is a possibility. But
well, I'm not doing so either. However, I am trying to take your points, but attempt to bridge the gap between what and a general audience might be thinking and the point that you've made to try to make sure that the distance between them can be bridged, because there is a clear difference in the everything will obviously be okay sort of standpoint, where if you go to a generic let's say more libertarian ANCAP type of perspective, of course, which is where my home sort of lies, philosophically, you will have retorts to any time people talk about job disruptions, and you will always go back to the person who created the light bulb, with the candle makers, or you'll go to the horse and buggy, the carriage people with the automobile, and you'll have all of these things where something will displace something else, and the narrative there is that everything will clearly be okay, and there are in those disruptions actual real human costs. There are times
Absolutely.
where the people who are displaced are not able to immediately find their new home. So even though on the longest horizon everything worked out okay, I mean, look at the modern world, it is amazing.
Yes,
humans
absolutely.
were involved in that displacement, some of them, and depending on what it was, when steel manufacturing went overseas primarily, there was in the Northeast, there were steel towns that sort of went destitute, and the people that sort of lived there and had their whole lives sort of based around that type of economy and that type of market, many of those, eventually had succumbed to personal strife involving drugs and things like that. Areas start to succumb to crime. So it's not a costless transition, even when it works out okay in the end.
Absolutely. That is a fantastic point, and I agree with you 100%. There is, and really, I think, look, here's what I feel I can do for people right now, because your point is 100% correct, which is it doesn't matter, even if it is ultimately okay, if the process of getting there involves, you losing your job, your wife divorcing you, becoming an alcoholic and killing yourself while your kids grow up with a different father, right? Like that's not exactly. Statistically, things were okay, except for
right.
All the people that had to go into like even less safe jobs and got even more aggressive forms of lung whatever the miners got because they couldn't shift out into any other job, and that's the only thing that you had to do. So I guess this is the question I'm trying to answer, which is, okay, what do I do now, like today, so that I am not a casualty tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Right. That is my personal question. And again, I'm not saying I have the answer. I don't know. I might be a casualty. Right. But I'm getting a sense of is that static things are most vulnerable here, right? Like if your job is filling a form at a bureaucratic company and you are the F2011 guy, that is a problem, right? If you are engaged in sort of bridging incompatible philosophical paradigms, maybe you're better off. Like, I also asked the question for the same reason: what do I teach my kids? Right? Like, I got 2 boys, and I got to sort of figure out how to educate them so that in 20 years when they come out into the job market, there's something they can do. And my conclusion is generally that you need depth in something. Okay, it's just so you know what depth looks like. But breadth, it feels to me like is much more important, even than it was in the recent past, where it was still quite important. But it feels like right now, if you don't have some substantial breadth, you are in real trouble.
You are more vulnerable, I would say, absolutely, if you do not have potential agility. Now, a lot of people do have agility they might not have contemplated. That the experiences they've had over the course of their life actually lends them to have skill sets that are transferable to other domains that they might not imagine. But finding what you don't currently know you possess is a long struggle. And
well,
finding...
you can go to GPT and ask it.
yes. Tell the enemy what your capabilities are.
You joke, but I seriously think if you go to your GPT, if you turn on memory, so it has access across your conversations, and say like, tell me things about me that I might not realize are true, but will agree are true once I hear them. You will be surprised how good it can be at this.
Well, so that all that goes.
What? Let me wrap this up with something that will make what I just said relevant, which is that I think the future is not humans working solo. I think the future is humans working in conjunction with AI, which is why you can't. I find the comparisons of like, well, an AI can do such and such tasks better than a human. I find these comparisons to fall flat with me personally. Like, they don't make me sort of that concerned, because my assumption is that people are going to work in conjunction with AIs, which is why I have also historically encouraged people to interact with these tools as much as possible. I realize there is a rationale for like sort of staying away from it, ignoring it, or sort of keeping yourself pure of the brain waves that it might invoke or whatever. And some good friends of ours have gone that way, at least for some time. But I don't follow that path. I follow the other path, which is to go as deep and as fast as I possibly can. Because I might not know a lot, but I know that if the future progresses along this timeline, like we don't regress, which we'll talk about later. Who's going to nuke who? If we avoid that, the future does look like some kind of symbiosis. So getting in a good sort of instinct for what AI is good for and what AI is not good for, via trying it on all sorts of things, I think is just an incredibly good idea.
A symbiosis, possibly figuratively and literally.
I don't know what you mean by that, but okay.
Well, how many robot parts are you going to install over the course of the years as your human competitors start installing robot parts?
Yes. I don't know. I got my new phone here that I'm going to boot. So what's the difference?
Alex, just in case you were worried that only bad ideas would come from the AI space, or that potential problems would arise from bad ideas in that space, don't worry. Politico has the strange and totally real plan to blot out the sun and reverse global warming. Janos Pastors was conflicted. Sitting in his home office in a village just outside Geneva, he stared into the screen of his computer where a bizarre Zoom call was taking place. It was January 31st, 2024. The chief executive of an Israeli-U.S. startup, to whom Pastors was only just being introduced, was telling him that the company had developed a special reflective particle and the technology to release millions of tons of it at high into the atmosphere. The intended effect, to dim the light of the sun across the world and throw global warming into reverse. The CEO wanted Pastor, a former senior United Nations climate official, to help. The company called itself Stardust Solutions. Pastor, a deliberate and self-assured Hungarian with thick, arched eyebrows that give him the appearance of a mildly perturbed owl, was stunned by the seriousness of Stardust's operation. He had long been expecting that some company would try this, but the emergence of a well-financed, highly credentialed group represented a shocking acceleration for a technology still largely confined to research papers, backyard debates, and science fiction novels. The Stardust CEO, Yanni Yedvab, was a nuclear physicist who once was deputy chief scientist at the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission, and he jumped straight to the point. He wanted Pastor to advise him on how to build public credibility, which would be necessary to land the government contracts for sunlight reflection that the company and its investors were banking on. The CEO appeared keenly aware that Stardust had the potential for the kind of public image problems normally reserved for James Bond villains and Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. Those challenges were likely not made easier by picking a company named to echo Star Wars Project Stardust, the code name for the bad guys in the Galactic Empire used for the Death Star, a weapon designed to destroy entire worlds. For decades, scientists had theorized that lacing the atmosphere with a cloak of dust would temporarily reduce global warming. Few, however, had actually advocated researching the practice, and none could say how dangerously it might destabilize weather patterns, food supplies, or global politics. Many scientists still warn it will take many years to know whether such technology would prove wise or disastrous. The term for it, solar geoengineering, stratospheric aerosol injection, or solar radiation management, sound deceptively anodyne. To most people, the idea of blotting out the sun still induces derision and disgust, a kind of planetary body horror. What if Stardust was claiming on this? If what Stardust was claiming on the Zoom call with Pastor was true, then the key threshold had already been crossed. Humanity had gained the power to turn down the sun, and barely anyone on the planet even knew. What's more, that untested power was now effectively for sale. In a world of rising chaos, sci-fi pilled billionaires and nationalist leaders, a private company offering the means to control the world's temperature with almost no international laws regarding the deployment of such technology was a disturbing prospect, thought Pastor. And nowhere in this article, Alex, have I heard the joke that the Jews are trying to control the weather. I can't believe.
I mean, with NTG out of the picture, I feel like the space laser stuff is getting out of fashion.
So yes, just so we all know that it's not just people in the AI world who are creating things that might not want to be, deserve to be created.
Might not turn out well. Gator, I have a great demonstration of the pattern I described right before.
All right.
Whenever you see somebody suggesting some radical new idea, just in case, I'm not saying that this is a general method, but you should totally, for your own sort of sanity, you should do the following. You should take the link, put it into your favorite LLM, and then right underneath it, what could possibly go wrong? And just press enter and see what happens. For example, I did this with this article. Okay. And it says, number 1, termination shock. This is the single biggest fear. If we successfully mask global warming with these particles, we are essentially putting a lid on a boiling pot without turning down the heat, CO2 emissions. If the system ever stops due to bankruptcy, war, a terrorist attack on the delivery infrastructure, or a solar storm knocking out the tech, the lid comes off. The result, all warming that was masked for years or decades would hit the planet all at once. The global temperature could spike by multiple degrees in a matter of a few years. The rapid heating would likely be too fast for humans, crops, ecosystems to adapt to, leading to mass extinction and societal collapse. 2, weather wars and regional catastrophe. You can't just cool, quote unquote, the Earth. You're altering the complex fluid dynamics of the atmosphere. Rainfall shifts. Cooling the atmosphere alters the jet streams. Models suggest this could permanently shift the monsoon rains that billions of people rely on. No big deal. One nation's perfect temperature could cause a permanent drought in the Amazon or the Sahel, or catastrophic flooding in Southeast Asia. Geopolitics. Who gets to set the thermostat? If the U.S. wants it cooler for its crops, but that freezes Russia or parches India, you have a recipe for a nuclear conflict, of course. But that will definitely fix the climate. So there you go. Why is this in the problem category? The ozone layer. Historically, proposals often involved sulfates mimicking volcanoes, which degrade the ozone layer, while Stardust and others propose using different materials like gold or diamond dust. To avoid this, the chemical interactions of injecting millions of tons of any fine particulate into the upper atmosphere are poorly understood and could still strip away our protection from UV radiation. Anyway, and that's just the top 3 of a list of 7 it generated. So,
well, without going too deep down a global warming or climate change rabbit hole, Alex, are you familiar with sort of the anthropogenic climate change sort of hypothesis that has been the leading sort of idea?
I will tell you one thing, which is that when I started doubting everything with COVID, and then we reemerged into a world of AI. One of the first things I did with GPT is I asked it to check the earliest IPCC projections and tell me how they panned out. And it turns out they did not.
Yeah, so, I first cut my teeth in undergrad. I first cut my teeth on it in undergrad, actually reading the IPCC report. I forget, it was around 2007 that I was reading it. And I learned a whole lot by reading that, including the fact that most people don't actually even have a true concept of what the claim even is. And I don't know if you got down that far to understand.
No, I did not. I literally just took the report, dumped it into GPT, and said, "What are the predictions and how they come true?" And it was like it had to stretch itself to find that maybe one of the 3 sort of is within the 95% interval.
Okay, so without going too far down the hole, you probably wouldn't be surprised to know that, of course, it's all based off of model projections, right? It's not.
Yes.
Okay. You are, of course, aware that somewhere in the stack of things, CO2 is involved. But what most people don't know is that CO2 is not the component that is actually, hypothesized to create the most warming. It is more of a catalyst to create the warming. So what the broad idea behind it actually is, Alex, is that the increase in the concentration of atmospheric carbon dioxide warms the planet a little bit, and it does it by capturing the infrared energy that is reflected off of the Earth's surface from the sun. So the sun's white light goes through our atmosphere, does not contribute to the warming, but the energy from that gets absorbed into the surface somewhere, let's say black tar, the forest greens, something, it gets absorbed, and then it gets re-emitted as infrared light, as heat, back out into the atmosphere, and that is where it starts to become captured by gases that are absorbing infrared radiation. So the energy does not escape back out into space, so to speak.
So CO2 is the molecule that grabs that infrared
as a catalyst. Yes, it grabs a portion of that energy and therefore does heat the Earth by a moderate amount. And the estimates, I'm not going to say that they're hard fixed, but they're approximately 2 centigrade per doubling of the concentration, so the parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. Okay, so for every doubling, you get another increase of, let's say, 2 centigrade. Now, once that rises, you get an increase in the temperature, which then causes more evaporation of water, okay, creating atmospheric H2O. Now, Alex, what forms of atmospheric H2O exist? We have clouds, and we just have general humidity. Now, clouds reflect when they are nice, bright and white. They reflect sunlight, which reduces the amount of energy that can make it to the surface of the Earth, and therefore fail to be absorbed by the Earth, therefore fail to be radiated back out as infrared wavelength radiation and be absorbed by CO2. And then there is, let's just call it humidity, so it's not forming into clouds. And that is where the core driver of the hypothesis of the anthropogenic global warming hypothesis comes. It is that the atmospheric H2O that does not proceed to form into reflective clouds, the surface albedo as they call it, is where there is an additional part of the infrared spectrum that is not currently absorbed to a high degree that would be increasingly absorbed by this H2O in the atmosphere. And it is that feedback loop, a minor increase in CO2 causing an increase in temperature, causing an increase in water vapor, basically absorbing more of the infrared that was already being radiated out, therefore trapping it instead of it making it into space, rising the temperature, causing more atmospheric H2O, causing more temperature increase. It is that feedback loop that is the primary idea behind behind the issue. And there are a couple additional feedback loops, such as CO2 that is currently dissolved in bodies of water that is then escaping due to increased evaporation of those bodies of water. Now, the projections that you said you were told were not really panning out are because there are all sorts of pluses and minuses involved in that calculation, including the one that I already mentioned, which is if you get more cloud coverage, you are already reflecting more of the sun's energy before it hits the ground. Right, the same idea behind this Stardust thing, right? Reflecting the energy back out before it hits the ground. And there's also the fact that if you increase the Earth's temperature by a modest amount, you tend to get more vegetation, which then subtracts the CO2 from the atmosphere because that's what plants crave, as they say in Idiocracy. So there's all sorts of pluses and minuses that go on that make the question about exactly what the temperature trajectory would be overall across the globe sort of ambiguous. So they throw them into models. They came up with the models. And there is only a core amount of people who study, a small core of people who study that main question about what whether the models are getting correct on the pluses and minuses across the way that the entire system interacts. And the rest of the entire industry, all of the science, all of the research are done assuming that's true and what they can imagine the effects would be, such as ocean acidification and such. So whenever you hear things like the consensus, 98% of the scientists or whatever believe in global warming, there's only a core few that study the main question that I just pontificated on, and the rest of them don't look at any of that. They deal with other things that are consequences of the idea of it being true.
I'm about to blow your mind because I have actually the 97% claim is something that I have, in fact, looked into, and it is a joke. I'm attaching to the space an analysis of that number, and it basically had never existed. It is a bundling of a misquoting of a mischaracterization of a mistake that becomes that number. And I was, of course, like most things in life, forced to look into it because Sam Harris just said it as if it was like, obviously 97% of all scientists agree that humans are changing the climate or whatever. And it's just not that at all. That is not what that means. Whenever you hear anybody just spout that, they are, for a fact, they don't check things. They talk about
well, I mean, there's like I was saying, there's all sorts of pluses and minuses. And you know what a major minus to that contribution would be, Alex? Even when I just said that, vegetation tends to increase, you get more, the earth gets greener, as they would say. Not only that, but the rate of photosynthesis for many species of vegetation, a significant amount of species of vegetation, photosynthesis rates increase for a modest temperature increase, which means that the plants that already exist actually consume more CO2 to photosynthesize when you have a modest. Of course, there's a curve to that. But like the calculations that would need to be involved in the models to make sure that you have an accurate sort of projection when you do this thing are so intricate that the idea that they had these models correct when they started on this road.
I just, if people learn nothing else from listening to us rant every Sunday, I wish it's just this one thing, to be a lot less sure about things, especially when they're utilizing models and statistics, because and just so people don't think I'm sort of red coding what I'm saying, I think much of IQ research, for example, is the same trash. The same trash. It is wonderful that the people who say IQ research is suspect will cite global warming, and the people who say global warming is a hoax will cite IQ research, because or
okay,
the opposite happens.
What is the IQ of the people who cite IQ research?
Well, I think it's like slightly above the average, but not enough to see through it. Sorry, what I was saying is, and there's an equivalent tug of war with energy, where there is a bunch of sort of green, energy sort of skeptics that will tell you about, like, oh, if we were to cover the earth in solar panels, blah 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 blah, and there's like all sorts of projection mania happening. On the other side, there is the whole peak oil projectioning happening. That I don't know how many models need to crash and burn in front of our eyes for us to get the message that we just can't. We're not very good at this.
Peak oil is the idea that at some point in the near term we will run out of the quote fossil fuels that we rely on to provide energy for majority of our activities. Is that correct? Right. That is the
okay. Yes. And there's a lot of catastrophizing from the green side as well, right? Like the climate change stuff, but not only. All I'm saying is, this is not a political coded point that I think both of us are making, but I definitely am making. It is that humans have managed to confuse themselves with statistics and models way too many times, that if you are not intimately aware with one, as in like, either you've made it or you've like been next to the people making it, or have been. It is so simple you could recreate it if it was taken away from you. Like I would just not put any money at all. I don't know, or at least it has a predictive track record that you could point to. But with most of these things, and I'll cite IQ again just to give you a sense. Whenever people cite some things, you dig them up and your jaw drops. Like somebody was saying, like, oh, the average IQ of Nigerians is 70 or whatever. It's something along those lines. So I'm like, all right, like that sounds pretty incredible, given that they have a country that exists. How that is knowing what IQ is supposed to mean, that is literally everybody that you have to go quite high to pass the retarded stage of humanity in the country, right? That's quite wild. So I look it up, and inevitably with many of these, it comes down to some British colonial official went to some village in remote Nigeria or some similar country, because they also copy paste between countries a lot of these numbers, and gave a 5-question questionnaire to children in that classroom, which we now know can be converted to IQ under some factor. And we will use that as the number that will tell you, even though we know that there's a Flynn effect. Like, the dumbness is just like compounding, and it's like you can't possibly be doing this, and yet here we are. Like, and you will hear these things, and I welcome you trying it. Like, if you hear,
as much
like,
as I am honored,
average...
as much as I am honored to be blocked by Nicholas Taleb 3 times in my life, there is a point that Taleb brings in this argument that is fairly straightforward in my opinion, that a lot of people just seem to not really understand, which is that it is exceptionally easy. Assume for a moment, Alex, that IQ has a validity in its quantification and its measurement. Just assume for the moment.
Yep.
There is still a property of it that creates issues when it comes to talking about what the measurements might mean, and that is that it is exceptionally easy to cause someone from a normal or a high IQ to then go to a low IQ simply by, let's say, striking them in the head too hard, right? It is, or removing a part of their brain, or poisoning them with lead. Like, it is possible to take someone from a high-end state to a low-end state, but it is not possible to take them from a low-end state to a higher-end state in the same way. There's no magic way of doing that, even if it's possible, let's say, gradually through some sort of education system or something like that, where through a series of courses you could actually connect the brain in some way that increases this quantification of intelligence. It's exceptionally easy to do it to make people, let's say, quote, dumber. And that, therefore, makes all of the distributions that people start talking about when it comes to the average bottom loaded, right? Because there's so many environmental hazards, so many ways that you can take someone who was of normal intelligence or
didn't turn it out. Yeah.
Right. That the measurement of the aggregate stuff does not really help at all. I think that's a reasonable point.
And to give people more to dig into, one of my favorite hobbies recently is to go to an LLM and ask how many core principles of metrology does IQ violate, and just see what comes out. Because, I mean, think about it. Like, what is an IQ point? Like, what is it? Like, I can tell you what a Celsius degree is, right? What is an IQ point? Right? Well, it is a deviation from the average of what? The average of IQ points. Like, this is not and by the way, you don't have to, I think a lot of people, when we say the things we're saying here, will hear these people are denying intelligence exists, yada, yada, whatever. What I am saying is this. Humanity went a very long time before being able to correctly measure longitude. I think it was longitude or latitude, one of the two. I think it was latitude. It was longitude. As in how far east or west you are. I think that's the one. And nobody doubted that the number existed, right? It's just that it was exceptionally difficult to put together a device that would give you that number for wherever you were in the world. So to me, to just sort of jump on a thing because that's the one we have and say, we found it, even when there's an exceptional amount of concerns around it, actually prevents you from figuring out what it is that you're talking about. And one of the funniest things that happens when I chat with LLMs about this is I'm like, well, why don't we improve it? Like, there's all these problems, and we sort of know how to fix some of them. Like, for example, there's a well-known assessor bias in IQ tests. And that sounds exceptionally stupid, because why are we having people grade them, right? Why not make them such that you don't need people to grade them? And it's the answer that comes back with is amazing, which is that, well, we have a lot of data on this one, so we can't quite change it now.
So, I guess that's a good excuse.
So we're stuck with it.
I mean, it's a very similar excuse to the thing that you told me about the ivermectin study earlier today. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just so you're like, okay, so there's no way, like, you can't beat this argument except with a time machine, right? Like, we've been collecting this number ever since we thought, DDT was a good bedtime snack for kids. So I don't know, man. Like, it's very tiresome to me. And again, all I'm saying is don't trust that number. That literally is the extent of what I'm saying. But people will hear things like, everybody's equal and let's all be butterflies and whatever. And I guess if we're going to take, I will take a slight detour, I suppose, because it's always fun beating on the Anglos. If you think that, which is the vibes that are spreading around Twitter right now, that, certain places have superior civilizations because the people that inhabit them are genetically superior, which is like almost a given right now in Twitter. It's not even argued at this point. It's just considered a granted. Explain to me why, if you turn back the clock, I don't know, a couple thousand years, Scandinavia, Denmark, Germany, Britain are, no man's land. Like, it's unclear whether they're more advanced than the American Indians. Or if you are not convinced about that point of time, just go further back, where at the same time, the Mediterranean, China, India, or other places in the world have very advanced civilizations. What happened, right? Did the people change? Not that much. Okay, so there's something. A lot of the discourse is around sort of freezing the current moment, looking around you and saying, well, obviously, blah. And it's like, it doesn't even hold like a basic questioning, but people aren't questioning. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, let's move on. Only because we have so much more to get into. I'm going to open this up to comments at the halfway mark here now. If you want to request to speak and comment on anything we've discussed so far, go ahead and raise your hand here, request to speak, and I'll get you on up here. I'm going to go through a quick story here, Alex, as we transition. This is part of AutoPen Gate. Alex, I'm going to just remind the audience, or if they weren't aware, this is something that we've been following even before it actually became a gate. You had posted at one point while Joe Biden had been missing for a while, supposedly having COVID, and a medical emergency that was a little bit buried by the news, where he was possibly going to land in an emergency in Vegas. You had asked whether or not, when was the last time anyone actually saw him sign something himself, and I had pointed you out to the existence of the AutoPen, and ultimately this snowballed into a real scandal, because now, as we've read in many stories over time, it has come to light that inside of the White House there was a lot of middlemen, with their own middlemen being middlemen to other middlemen, engaged in discussion about what things to sign, particularly as the news stories cover with regards to his pardons later in his term, and who actually approved those pardons and commutations. And there are a chain of custodies, let's say, of authorization that as of yet don't clearly lead back to the president, which open questions as to whether or not Joey actually authorized or knows he authorized things. And the AutoPen, just if you aren't aware, is just a mechanical automated pen that copies a pre-recorded version of the president's signature, and has historically been used simply for high volume things that are, need his signature but don't have much impact. So, signing just little official authorizations of, let's say, congratulations, an official congratulation from the president or something.
Gator, I have a simple thought experiment for you, because I'm known for
you don't like thought experiments.
I know, but this one I think you'll enjoy.
All right.
So let's say that Biden authorizes a pardon for somebody, right? And that sort of is, I don't know, spoken to his secretary, who then calls up the aide of the person. Then that person goes to sleep, wakes up the next morning, sends an email to the appropriate handler of the AutoPen. Whatever. It's yeah, the AutoPen's in the bathroom right now, but it's going to come out very soon. Eventually, right? the command goes to the auto pen, and the pardon is signed. Unfortunately, in the meantime, Biden's died. Is that a valid pardon?
For my purposes, I would say in a as a concept, yes, spiritually speaking, it was a valid pardon. However, in your story, there seems to be a lot of room for lack of chain of custody record, which means it's now just all word of mouth of he said, she said, oh, Joey totally told me that.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
so practically, or maybe like legally standard speaking.
The thing about signing something is that you are there signing the thing. Okay. And the distance between, like, because that's a definitive black and white thing that either happened or didn't. Right. That's the whole point of having a signature. Like, that is why we do this. Like, that, even though it's a ridiculous custom that you're making a squiggle on a piece of paper that is trivial to copy. Let's be honest.
Well, Alex, have you ever tried to do a something that required notarization where you could actually, use modern technology to do an online notarization?
Yes, I have.
If you haven't had this experience, people listening, it's actually interesting because for the online notarization to be valid, you might wonder, well, how can you have a notary that does stuff online? You actually have to do it through like a webcam. So you have to look the person through the webcam in the eyes. I'm sure there's ways I could probably come up with some ways to fake it, but to spoof somebody with the modern technology. But at least the idea makes sense where you actually have to go and do a Zoom call basically with a licensed notary who is then performing those services, and there's no just like word of mouth in that. And I would think, Alex, that commutations and pardons rise to the level of at least requiring a notary to.
Yeah, apparently not. And here's where this whole thing is going to come down, by the way, right? It's going to be, the one side is going to say, well, you can't prove he didn't authorize it.
Yes.
And the other side is going to say, well, you can't prove that he did authorize it.
And retroactively, really he says he did. So.
Yeah. But I mean, he says a lot of things, just FYI. He also thinks his son died of cancer or in Iraq or in various places. So it's unclear what is meant by the poet when he says he did sign it. So that's the real problem. Like we have a system that was meant to do like one job, and we have subverted that one job by using a machine that was invented. Honestly, I mean, probably for like corporate CEOs to sign like Christmas cards. I feel like that's probably the core use case for the auto pen. Now being used to, do really, really important life and death things. And nobody really being in a position to demonstrate clearly how that happened.
Well, the auto pen gate story for the week, Alex, is CBS News. Trump says he's canceling all Biden orders that were signed using an auto pen. President Trump said Friday he is canceling all orders signed by former President Joe Biden using an auto pen, a mechanical device that reproduces signatures. Quote, any document signed by Biden via the use of auto pen, quote, is hereby terminated and of no further force or effect, Mr. Trump wrote on Truth Social. Quote, I am hereby canceling all executive orders and anything else that was not directly signed by crooked Joe Biden because the people who operated the auto pen did so illegally. Mr. Trump said, quote, Joe Biden was not involved in the auto pen process, and if he says he was, he will be brought up on charges of perjury. Biden signed 162 executive orders during his presidency, according to the American Presidency Project. It's unclear how many were signed using an auto pen, though it's not unusual for presidents to revoke their predecessors' directives. Mr. Trump has already rolled back dozens of Biden's executive orders. The president rescinded nearly 70 of Biden's executive orders shortly after he was sworn in on January 20th for his second term, and another 19 on March 14th, according to the White House. Mr. Trump previously ordered an investigation into the Biden White House's use of the auto pen to sign presidential documents like pardons, claiming there was a conspiracy to abuse power of the presidential signatures through the use of an auto pen to conceal Biden's cognitive decline. In a July statement, Biden called Mr. Trump's claims nothing more than distraction. Quote, let me be clear, which Joe Biden has always said to obfuscate all sorts of things. I made the decisions during my presidency. I made the decisions about the pardons, executive orders, legislations, and proclamations. Any suggestion that I didn't is ridiculous and false, Biden said. House Republicans released a report
claiming that he made all decisions around legislation that passed during his tenure.
Signing. Let's give him some benefit of doubt that he implies signing the legislation or vetoing it, sir.
Okay, fine. That's a good answer.
House Republicans released a report last month that was critical of Biden's auto pen use, but did not include clear evidence that his aides conspired to sign laws or other directives out of knowledge. However, people who have remember some of the stories that we've read in the past here do go into detail about the lack of chain of custody and sort of the ridiculous game of telephone that was played with some of these things. And so there is a lot of ambiguity, as we've said, as to whether or not Joey actually really was involved, because the chain of custody of his authorization is really not there, or has not been presented as there. Presidents have long used an auto pen to sign documents. In 2005, the Justice Department under President George W. Bush said the president can legally use an auto pen to sign bills into law. In March, Mr. Trump acknowledged he has also used an auto pen, but only for very unimportant papers. So there's our auto pen gate update. Alex, as long as he's reversing things that are within his power to easily reverse, I guess that's going to be done and not questioned. If he tries to do anything deeper, like somehow attempt to undo the commutations and the pardons, boy, do I imagine we have a huge fight ahead. That's going to be an insane battle if he tries to do that.
So this did not include that?
Not to my understanding. It was the executive orders.
Well, but so the pardons and commutations are understood to be distinct things?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, Alex, we're going to transition now to the second half here, and I will try to get as much in as I possibly can topic-wise, but I had a large topic prepared for today, so I can't really throw it to the wayside. Are you familiar, Alex, with the older meme of the internet called Slenderman?
No, I am not.
Okay. All right. Well, this was a meme that was sort of in not necessarily the original infancy of the internet, but in sort of the 2000s blossoming, where it sort of became a staple of people's everyday life, that this meme sort of commenced. And I'm going to play a short clip of a PBS sort of explainer as to what Slenderman is before we transition into why we're talking about Slenderman today.
Slenderman is one of the internet's very few reoccurring and arguably its most frequently encountered threatening paranormal ghoulies. As his name suggests, he is a man shape, but a slender one. And not like Fassbender Slender, more like creepy Slender, like The Silence or Conan O'Brien or the ice cream truck driver from Legion. Slenderman doesn't have a face, but he does have a suit, and sometimes upwards of 6 tentacle-like arms. And though it's not entirely clear what he does when he gets you, it's probably not make you tea and show you the cross-stitching he's been working on. Slendy first appeared in photographs on Something Awful, but has since shown up in all kinds of creepypasta, which are like scary stories that are passed around the internet that you maybe saw me talk about in this ancient Know Your Meme video, link in the doobly-doo. Slendy is the frequent topic of visual art, usually lurking in the shadows. He's in video games where you have to actively evade his terrifying pursuit. And he's in videos, most notably Marble Hornets, Tribe 12, and Everyman Hybrid, where his mere presence causes bizarre distortion in camera gear and fits of coughing and extreme paranoia in the characters. The Slenderman media complex is comprised of many mediums and tells hundreds, if not thousands, of stories. BBC Radio 4's digital human host Alex Krotowski even asks if it might be the first great myth of the web. And it doesn't feel like too far-fetched of a question either. Slenderman's countless authors have, accidentally or not, developed a rather complete feeling Slenderman mythos. Like, according to the legend, baddies depicted in prehistoric Brazil, ancient Egypt, 16th century Germany, and Japan bear a strong resemblance to Mr. Slend. Was he really invented by Victor Surge on Something Awful, or was he channeled? Is it possible that he is a constant and pervasive presence throughout all of history? Some stories place him, or beings like him, in Germany around World War II and in other parts of the world around various horrific events, both major and minor. Links to some stories in the place where links go. One explanation explanation for his existence is something called tulpa, which Indian Buddhist texts describe as a mind-conjured apparition. Slenderman has been willed into existence because he is in the subconscious of many, many people. In the West, we call this a thought form, and therein lies what might be the best and most interesting thing about No-Face Longarms. While he does have a form that's recognizable and a general air de terror, he is not one thing in one place with one motive. He's a nebulous, psychically crowdsourced terror. He is literally the internet's nightmare. It's legendary creature.
So that's the introduction to Slenderman. That was done in 2013 by PBS. And Alex, are you familiar with Mothman? The Mothman Prophecies was a movie that was sort of made off of this long, hypothesized creature that was, you can think of it like in the vein of Chupacabra, the mythical types of creatures that haunt the night.
I'm happy to report that I'm aware of precisely zero of. Okay. All right. Well, the words you just mentioned. There are
sort of living legends, and folklore that as memes go in the world have a mind of their own and get developed on over time. And the Slender Man was one that was sort of the first internet spawned mythical legend, and it became very, very popular. Now that was in 2013, that explainer, and in 2014, the Slender Man mythology took a very dark turn.
And our big story at 5, two 12-year-old girls charged with trying to stab a friend to death after a sleepover. Police say they were inspired by a fictional character from the internet.
The age of these suspects and being female both lead into, and obviously the details of what happened in the investigation. This is a very disturbing investigation.
The girl who was attacked somehow survived 19 stab wounds.
Doctors said she was a millimeter away from death. Jermont Terry live at Waukesha County Courthouse with our big story at 5.
Steve, I'm standing where this 12-year-old stumbled out of the woods. Police say her friends lured her to this area and then held her down, stabbing her 19 times. They, according to police, tried to kill her. But amazingly, this little girl survived after a man on a nearby bike heard her cries for help. With her head hung and long blonde hair nearly covering her face, 12-year-old Morgan Geyser appears in court. Geyser and her friend, now co-defendant, 12-year-old Anissa Wire, aren't even teenagers, but they are charged as adults with attempted homicide.
I recognize the young age, but it's still unbelievable, I guess, if you want to put it that way. What's outlined in the criminal complaint.
The criminal complaint says Wire and Geyser plotted for months to kill their friend, another 12-year-old.
Both suspects had a fascination with a fictitious character that often posted to a website that is a collection of small stories about death and horror.
After the three woke up Saturday morning from a sleepover at Wire's house, the two acted out the horrific plan. According to this criminal complaint, the girls grabbed a kitchen knife and led their friends to this woods. Now, they had second doubts, but that didn't stop them from going through with the unthinkable act.
Once there, one suspect held the victim down, while the other suspect stabbed her 19 times in the arms, legs, and torso.
Geyser's family left the courtroom in tears, refusing to speak. When we pressed Wire's father about the crime, he offered this.
Shocked as well by everyone else.
We have no comments at this time.
What can you tell me about your daughter? I mean, obviously in this light, she's being displayed in one way. What can you tell me?
Only that we have no comments at this time.
Geyser's attorney did offer this apology to the victim's family.
Morgan's parents are very sad about what has happened. They're horrified. And our condolences to everyone.
Were there any signs that parents saw that they were disturbed?
That's a very good question, and that is being looked into. I don't have that information in front of me right now. Part of our investigation, as you guys know, is to dig into the entire lives of the victim and the suspects.
And tonight we know that Waukesha police continue to investigate as they're trying to figure out exactly what really led these little girls to think that this was okay. Obviously, we know the details of what they read in that website are part of it. As for this 12-year-old victim, she remains in stable condition at Waukesha Memorial Hospital. Amazingly and thankfully, that biker heard her cries for help because doctors say she was 1 millimeter from certain death.
So that was a very, very famous sort of attack, attempted murder situation that at the time that it occurred became a national sort of news story. Particularly, of course, Alex, I'm sure you can imagine that there was the typical panic that parents across the country would have when it came to things that their children might be getting into online and the dangers of things that are found online. When you have two 12-year-old girls, girls being a particularly scary scenario because men are typically viewed as being the impulsive, violent ones. And so having girls who are more generally seen as innocent and harmless young creatures adds a layer of fear into people's minds. And so, of course, this became just a national story, the Slenderman attempted killings, where the narrative at that point was that they were doing this because of the Slenderman stories that they had seen online. Now, at the early parts of their arrest and trial, the defense attorneys, you would not be surprised to learn, were attempting to say that their clients were mentally incompetent and could not stand trial, that this idea they had in their head of Slenderman gave rise to suggest that they were suffering from mental instability and delusions that made them not competent. And early on in the trial, they had psychiatrists testify to that effect.
A defense team's doctor's report finds one of the Slenderman stabbing suspects incompetent to defend herself in a trial. And now prosecutors are asking for a second opinion on that. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vince Vitrano. This is Live at Noon. 12-year-olds Anissa Weier and Morgan Geyser appeared before a judge once again today. They are accused of stabbing their friend 19 times in an effort to please an online legend known as Slenderman. Jonah Kaplan was inside the courtroom today explaining what happens next in this case.
The two tweens entered court clean, composed, but in chains. Morgan Geyser braided her blonde hair. Anissa Weier hid her face behind her brown waves. We're following court orders and not showing their faces. Attorneys for both girls want this case moved to juvenile court, but today different strategies emerged. Weier's attorney will rely on evidence that's so far been sealed.
That's strongly what we're focused on doing. That's our goal.
Morgan Geyser's team chose a different game plan and called in the doctors. Two physicians examined Geyser and found her mentally incompetent. They think she doesn't understand the situation she's in.
We think it's appropriate for the case to be handled in children's court, so this is all part of that process, looking at the mental health, looking at her functioning, competency, and issues like that.
The state challenges this conclusion, and prosecutors want more, including tests for mental disease. If the state's doctor thinks Geyser's healthy, prosecutors could argue she's fit to stand trial as an adult.
The competency report does not make a finding or a diagnosis of any mental disease or defect. State believes that would be helpful.
Many steps remain before these cases move to a trial, if that even happens. Their families have to endure all of it.
Mr. Geyser, how was it to see your daughter today?
This sets up a big showdown August 1st. It'll be a half-day-long hearing for Morgan Geyser. Doctors will be here to assess the competency report and mental examination. For Anissa Weier, just another move towards potentially moving this case to juvenile court. In Waukesha, Jonah Kaplan, today's TMJ4.
And the case did not wind up going to juvenile court. She was found the girls were found competent to stand trial. Now, Morgan Geyser is the girl in question who is going to be the main focus of the remaining part of the story, although her accomplice will be involved to some degree too. But Morgan Geyser is the one that everyone should be paying attention to as we continue. And this is not going to be a super long story. It will end rather soon, but there is developments this week that are of interest that we will get to. So at some point, the interrogation videos were released from the day that the two girls were picked up from the attempted murder.
At just 12, these two girls nearly took another classmate's life. Last May, they lured her to a wooded area where police say they stabbed her 19 times. Video of their interrogation being made public for the first time.
Who stabbed her first?
I think, and he stabbed her first, and then I continued, and then she was like, Morgan, make sure she doesn't escape. She told me that she got her in the lung right here 6 times, and then in the leg a few times.
The criminal complaint says the victim, who was also 12, was badly wounded. One knife strike coming so close to her heart, the criminal complaint says she was 1 millimeter away from certain death. Still, she survived. Not exactly how her attackers, Anissa Weir and Morgan Geyser, were hoping this would end. Listen.
So we told her we were gonna get help, but we really weren't. We were gonna run and let her pass away. So we ran.
The girls also told detectives how they each took part in the stabbing. This is their supply list. Notice the kitchen knife?
So then how did you get the knife from Anissa?
She sort of just shoved it into my hand, and there it was. And then I didn't know what I did. It sort of just happened. It didn't feel like anything. It was like air.
Incredibly, the victim managed to crawl out of the woods. A bike rider found her and got her to the hospital. The young suspects were arrested soon after, both charged as adults with attempted first-degree intentional homicide. When investigators asked why they did it, they both had the same answer: Slenderman. Police say the two attackers said they first encountered Slenderman on the website Creepypasta Wiki. They thought he was real, police say, and that if they didn't kill their classmate, then Slenderman would hurt them or their families.
When you guys were walking, you thought you saw Slender as you were walking?
This was after Morgan stabbed her. And he has tendrils that are very sharp.
Do you see him in your dreams, or where do you see him at?
Oh, I've seen him in my dreams.
Evidence presented in court shows what was found in Morgan Geyser's bedroom: dozens of disturbing drawings and numerous disfigured Barbie dolls, many with the Slenderman symbol on them. All proof, the defense team says, the girls truly believe Slenderman is real.
Truth be told, I wanted to be locked up so that I couldn't hurt her, but that time has passed, and now I'm in here because we were careless. I knew this would happen. I knew we'd get in trouble.
Now, ultimately, the girls were both tried, and I believe they both reached plea deals, but Morgan Geyser in particular reached a plea deal and pled guilty to certain parts of the crimes that she was charged with, and the sentencing for her was actually at the time fairly severe.
And that breaking news is out of Waukesha County, where Morgan Geyser has just learned that she will spend 40 years at a mental facility. Geyser is one of the 2 girls behind the Slenderman stabbing case, which began almost 4 years ago.
The 15-year-old just learned her fate minutes ago. Pete Servak is joining us outside now from the Waukesha County Courthouse.
Well, Shannon and Charles, just minutes before that sentence was handed down, a tearful Morgan Geyser said this. Listen.
I just want to let Bella and her family know I'm sorry. I never meant this to happen. I hope that she's doing well.
Geyser pleaded guilty last year in a deal that called for commitment to a mental institution instead of prison. At today's sentencing, attorneys for both sides called psychologists as witnesses to testify on Geyser's mental health.
It's my opinion that release to a less restrictive environment at this point would constitute a substantial risk of bodily harm to herself, others, or to her property.
I believe at the present time she is no more dangerous than any other adolescent her age.
So obviously the judge put more stock into that witness for the state. The state had asked for the 40-year commitment, which was the maximum. I did just speak to Geyser's lawyer. He says that she can first begin petitioning for release, provided she can prove she's not a danger to herself or to others, starting in 6 months. Live in Waukesha, Pete Zervakis, today's TMJ4.
Yeah, another.
So that was in 2018, Alex. So the stabbing was 2014. The conviction there just played for you was 2018. So a very long time for the trial to come to its conclusion. And there was an update earlier this year for Morgan Geyser on January 10th, 2025. JSOnline.com, Waukesha judge grants Morgan Geyser's petition for conditional release in Slenderman stabbing case. As Morgan Geyser walked into the Waukesha County Courthouse on Thursday, the obvious question that stood out is what would be different in the fourth quest for conditional release from court-ordered confinement tied to the infamous Slenderman case. It appeared at first not much had changed from the previous 3 attempts to gain conditional release, with sealed medical reports and the same expert witness on hand. In reality, much had. With the reports and testimony from 2 consulting mental experts, Deborah Collins and Brooke Lundbaum, a doctor called by the defense, Waukesha County District Judge Michael Obone ruled that Geyser could be processed with a plan for conditional release as part of his 40-year mental health treatment order from 2018. Quote, in reviewing all the reports in the matter, I'm satisfied under the circumstances that the court is going to grant the release, Boren said. I am satisfied that by clear and convincing evidence that Ms. Geyser does not pose a significant risk to bodily harm to herself or others. Now 22, Geyser had remained institutionalized at a Winnebago mental health facility, in effect home for a decade since the 12-year-old stabbed Peyton Lautner, aided by Anissa Weier, in May 2014 in Waukesha. Experts repeatedly evaluated Geyser, and those reports stood in the way of Geyser's release. One doctor revealed in proceedings Thursday that Geyser is now identified as a transgender male, beginning to a transition that includes male pronouns. Non-factors in Geyser's conditional release. Court officials continued to refer to Geyser using female pronouns throughout the proceedings and in documentation. Why was the result different this time? The answer is based on a strong shift in opinion from the medical experts. Geyser was 12 years old in 2014 when she and Weier lured Lautner, their 6th grade friend and classmate, to a wooded area near Davids Park and Big Bend Road. Lautner was stabbed 19 times, with both claiming they did so to satisfy the fictional internet character Slenderman. In 2017, Geyser was found not guilty by reason of mental defect, but fell under Bowen's 4-decade commitment order. Weier, also found not guilty by reason of mental defect, was granted conditional release in 2021, 4 years after the start of her 25-year commitment term. She was subsequently freed from electronic monitoring in 2023, according to court records. Lundbaum had been involved with Geyser's evaluation almost from the start and had previously opposed conditional release, including the early 2024 petition that was ultimately rejected by Bowen. But there was reason to reconsider that position now. Based on the most recent examination, Lundbaum testified that her opinion of whether Geyser should be conditionally released was changed since April 2024. Quote, at this time, I am in support of her conditional release. She said under the questioning from Deputy District Attorney Abby Nicolai, who called Lundbaum as the state's only witness Thursday. Lundbaum addressed Geyser's claims, beginning in 2022, that Geyser had fabricated symptoms of psychotic behavior following the incident in 2014. She also responded to questions from Boehm on that concern. Quote, there appears to be a stepping back from claims she had faked the symptoms. She said, quote, they have essentially abated. The key for Geyser's conditional release would have to involve some other form of care facility, such as a group home, one that was not strictly confining as the Winnebago Mental Health Institute. Geyser's attorney, Tony Cotton, asked Lundbaum to what extent Geyser had transitioned to Winnebago units that increased privileges, indicating Geyser's improvement in behavior standards. Quote, she was granted what's called full escort privileges, Lundbaum said, noting that Geyser has been able to move under supervision outside the facility, such as trips to Starbucks. Lundbaum also acknowledged that acute symptoms of psychosis have faded for more than 3 years to a point they are no longer clinically evident. Under questioning from Cotton, Lundbaum stressed that Geyser's move to a group home would consider its dual purpose. Quote, I am not only concerned about the safety of the community, but her safety, she said, noting the need for professional support services as part of Geyser's conditional release. Lundbaum also acknowledged that Geyser would need continued treatment, especially medication, to prevent regression to psychotic spectrum disorder symptoms that could pose a threat to the community. And so that was earlier this year, and we now have a update from the end of last week.
Our big story tonight at 9, cut and run. The woman involved in the Slenderman stabbing case is now missing.
Police say she cut off her monitoring bracelet and left a group home Saturday night. She was last seen in this Madison area neighborhood. Christina Vanzels joining us in studio with more on the search that is underway tonight.
Ted, Morgan Geyser spent 7 years in a psychiatric hospital and in and out of the courtroom after pleading guilty to attempted first-degree intentional homicide. In the fall, she was granted conditional release and placed in a group home. Tonight, she's missing.
Turn yourself in. Do not continue to remain on the run like this.
Defense attorney Anthony Cotton on Instagram Sunday with a plea to his client, Morgan Geyser. Madison police say she cut off her monitoring bracelet and left a group home Saturday night.
We don't know any of the facts about what happened or who might have assisted her, but certainly if there is somebody who's assisted her, that person will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Police say she was last seen near Cronky Drive in Madison with an adult acquaintance.
If she was able to commit that level of violence when she was so young, I can understand where the community is concerned that she's out there on the loose and God forbid somebody else gets hurt right now.
In 2014, Geyser and Anissa Wire pleaded guilty to stabbing and nearly killing their classmate. They say they did it for the fictional horror character Slenderman. They were 12 at the time. Both said they were not responsible because they were mentally ill.
Is she on the run with her medicine? And if she isn't, there certainly poses a danger to the community.
Defense attorney Jonathan Lavoie, who isn't directly involved in this case, says Geyser had years of work through hospitalizations and monitoring.
We can't keep mentally ill people in the hospital forever, particularly if they're showing signs of improvement and stability. And she certainly was doing and showing those signs.
Geyser requested to be released multiple times, all which were denied until April, when Geyser was granted conditional release. Those records are sealed, but we now know Geyser was placed in a group home in Madison. Lavoie says authorities will arrest her when they find her and will likely send her to a state hospital right away.
We did reach out to the district attorney's office for comment, but haven't yet heard back. A spokesperson for the victim, Peyton Leitner, sent us this statement. It reads in part, Peyton and her family are safe and are working closely with local law enforcement to ensure their continued safety. The family would like to thank all of the law enforcement entities involved in the efforts to apprehend Morgan. For the family's full statement, you can head to the Fox local app.
And we have a final update from earlier this week that brings it to why it is included in this segment of this dumb week, which is from the post-millennial. Transgender friend claims responsibility after trans Slenderman attacker escapes from group home. Authorities say the trans friend found with Morgan Geyser after her escape from Wisconsin group home is a biological man who insists the 23-year-old fled because of their friendship and because she believes staff were trying to keep them apart. Police located Geyser and Chad Charlie Mecca, 43, late Sunday night at a truck stop in Posen, Illinois, roughly 150 miles from the Madison area facility she walked out of that day. Officers had responded to reports of two people lingering behind the building before confirming Geyser's identity, reports the New York Post. Mecca told local outlet WKOW that he felt responsible for the situation. She ran because of me, he said, adding that she had been cited for criminal trespassing and obstructing identification. According to him, Geyser feared her group home would cut off their visits. Quote, she sobbed, "They'll take away our visitation. Charlie, please, you're my best friend." The two had met only a couple of months earlier at a church in Madison, but stayed in close contact. Mecca said that Geyser had already made clear she wasn't going back if she left the home. Quote, "At the end of the day, I followed what I thought was right. I stand by it," he said. Police referred to Mecca as male, though Geyser used female pronouns for Mecca during questioning. Court filings from earlier in 2025 revealed that Geyser, a biological female, had begun identifying as transgender. Investigators said the pair used public transit to get from Madison to Chicago, then traveled on foot nearly 20 miles south before being found in Posen. A police report suggested they may have been trying to reach Nashville, Tennessee. Geyser was 12 years old in 2014 when she and classmate and Isa Wire lured another girl, Peyton Lautner, to the woods and stabbed her 19 times in what they said was an attempt to appease a fictional character, Slenderman. Lautner survived after crawling to a bike path where a passerby spotted her. A judge later found Geyser not guilty by reason of mental illness. She spent years in secure psychiatric facility before being transferred to a supervised group home earlier this year. On Saturday evening, she removed her court-ordered ankle monitor and left the home. Police say she initially gave them a fake name after being detained, later telling officers she didn't want to reveal who she was. And thus is the update of the Slenderman attempted murderer, Morgan Geyser, breaking out of her group home pretty much immediately after being released from psychiatric facilities. So I would say bang up job all around everyone involved in the decision making. And
it's okay. It's not like she emotionally manipulated a co-conspirator to help her do what she wanted. So that's definitely changed.
So do you have any reaction to that story at all, or is that a lot to process?
It's dark. It's fucking dark, man. I don't know. I'm here, considering my options right now. Jesus Christ. Oh, good God. I mean, I got boys,
Yeah.
Sorry. Last they told me, I don't know at this point. It's one of those things that, I put myself in the shoes of both families, which I assume are fairly normal people. I don't know, whatever that means. And this could happen to you, both with your child or somebody else's child, either attacking yours or being attacked by yours. I don't know. My children have not shown any violent instincts of that nature so far, thank God. Yeah, I don't know, man. It just sounds terrible. It sounds not terrible is not the right word, actually. It's harrowing.
Well, the inside of the little clips that I played was part of the sentencing from 2018. So we're talking 4 years after the attack, and the defense's psychiatrist said that she was no more of a danger than any other girl her age. And it's like, you can probably, make a different claim that's more plausible than, than that. Like whether or not this girl is purely psychotic or was, faking having some actual legitimate mental conditions, such as, psychopathy or schizophrenia, things like that aided her ability to do this without understanding fully what she was doing. You could still dial it back from no more dangerous. Like you still have to grant that the girl has some troubles that she has to work through. You don't just magically recover, even if you somehow are able to come to grips with the tendencies that made you commit that act. You're still a person that committed that act and have to deal with the psychological impact of being the person that did it. And so therefore you are still in some ways on the mend and not stable enough necessarily. So you are at least a little bit more dangerous than any other girl.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a transition that puzzles me. How did all of that information get to her psychiatric facility exactly?
What do you mean?
The whole transition thing is a thing that is information mediated, right? It's not like people did not change their pronouns organically 50 years ago.
Right.
This is somehow being exposed to, well, for lack of a better term, the wrong memes, and something happening there, whatever. I'm I wonder what the deal is with that, really. I mean, once it's kind of what's the word? Very conspicuous. That's it. Conspicuous.
Yeah.
Other detail here in the story.
Yeah. So that I included this week because the moment that I saw that she was missing, I immediately had flashbacks of the entire story, because it was actually, a fairly major national story for a while because of the internet aspects, the internet culture, the meme aspects, etc. I'm going to invite Arm the Gormless up, who has requested to speak because we didn't get any volunteers at the midway point for this, and I'm going to give him some room to comment. Arm the Gormless, if you can hear me, I did approve you. There's typically a delay now, I guess, when I can see that the person has been brought up. If you don't start speaking in a couple moments, I'm going to move forward. Arm the Gormless.
Okay,
but if
sorry.
there he
Bluetooth issue. My apologies. I just have a quick comment, and then just a quick, just a quick comment on that harrowing story. It's my first comment is that my respect for the field of psychology grows with each day. The more stories like this I hear. But also just when that defense, I believe it was the defense attorney that was saying this, I could be wrong, please correct me if I am, but he was saying, anybody that abetted and helped her in her escape should be held responsible to the full extent of the law. And all I could think of is that was you and your experts. That was you facilitated this entire thing from, for happening. Anyway, that's it. Sorry, guys. Bye.
Well, wait. Expand on your comment on psychology. I just you didn't. I couldn't tell if you were being sarcastic or.
That was very thick sarcasm. It was kind of a cheap shot, but the more stories of kind of how flexible the science, so-called, of psychology is when it comes to getting people the results that they want, it's kind of hard to take serious. And anytime I hear it referred to in the same kind of with the same kind of respect, with the same assumption of rigor and peer review and all that kind of serious stuff, I can't take it seriously. So that's all I was just trying to say.
Not to be overly pedantic, because I do believe this is an important distinction. Those would be more psychiatrists than psychologists, because
which do you refer?
Well, to the extent that we are talking about potential debilitating mental illnesses such as schizophrenia, etc., that's going to be more in the realm of psychiatry, because psychology doesn't necessarily work.
What is saying is that it's not the soft science where they talk to you and try to elicit your prior lives or whatever. These are the people that used to take people's brain parts out.
Oh, yes, I understand. You mean as far as the experts that we're currently referring to?
Yes. These specific experts are far more serious.
There are overlapping considerations where they do also, of course, talk about mental health in a broad way that may have a lot of overlap with psychologists, but psychologists typically you may be aware, I'm just giving this as broad reference for people who may not be, is that psychiatrists are going to be the ones that prescribe you medication. Psychologists are going to be the ones who try to discuss with you aspects of your life and possibly help you navigate complex social or personal mental hurdles. So if you have a lot of guilt from something that you've done, or you have a lot of trauma that you are trying to work through that causes you to have difficult social relationships, because you act out in certain ways, or you have a large amount of fear due to the way that you were treated in the past, and you affect other people by the way that you handle your fear responses and things like that. That's going to be more of a psychologist's zone. But if you're talking about, let's say, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, anything along those lines, that's going to be a psychiatrist's domain more, because then they're going to prescribe you medication to try to ameliorate some of those excesses. And so in this particular case,
here I was thinking that your pedantic point was going to be that you can totally hold this science, whichever one it is anyway, in the same regard as the others, and have that regard not be a high one.
Psychology, I don't like, obviously the world of psychology is going to be totally hit or miss, but there is a degree to which I have more respect for psychologists than psychiatrists.
Because more for psychologists than psychiatrists, you said?
Yes, because inside of psychology, while you could say that they do they do make many mistakes when they try to play science. At least inside of the profession, there is a lot more understanding that what they're doing is more of a human social art than it is strictly scientific. So there's whereas psychiatrists, psychiatrists in general, now this is not necessarily all psychiatrists, but psychiatrists as a general tendency are going to prescribe you medication that is attempting to ameliorate one problem. Those drugs have major side effects, even in the best sense of the word, like something that might be helped to treat a bipolar disorder then renders the person that it's given to emotionally neutral, which may be considered a minor side effect, as opposed to, let's say, massive vomiting or something, or heart problems, but it's still a huge affecting problem where you have no emotional affect. So then typically, because they are already trying to squelch one problem that you have, yes, they've introduced other ones, but guess what? They have other medications for those. And that's where if you look at a lot of people who wind up having several psychiatric medications, particularly in the juvenile space, where pediatric psychiatry winds up taking children who maybe slightly above average in certain let's call them development deficits, the hyperactive kids, things like that. They start giving them pills and they wind up down with this whack-a-mole thing with different medications, and large number of children wind up completely disorganized as they grow into adults, because they've been hopped up on so many different types of mind-altering drugs that they don't have an internal.
And actually, this brings us back to the original topic, because you might say, well, look at this, she escaped and she did the same thing that she had done before, or somehow the two are connected, or who couldn't have seen this coming. But if we're being honest and rigorous here, we can't rule out that what exactly an upbringing this girl has had the last 10 years, from a 12-year-old to a 22-year-old.
Right.
From not having access to her family to whatever hell drugs she was subjected to. And I'm not saying that she was owed a good life or whatever. I'm just mechanically speaking, things have intervened.
Oh no, absolutely. It is perfectly fair to consider what her experience was like that could have contributed to this latest sort of fleeing act the moment that she was given a little bit of relaxed oversight. Still Waves, you request to speak. Go ahead and.
Yeah, sure. Was anyone else reminded of, wasn't that the plot for the movie Halloween? Michael Myers, he was like he committed some atrocious thing and then he was locked up. And
it's been a long time since I've seen the OG Halloween. I've mostly seen the silly later installments more recently.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's time for a trendy new, with the trans angle remake of it with maybe Michelle Myers or something like that.
Oh man.
Well done.
You had to go there. Well, Alex, we're going to do another short segment here before we break into Venezuela and Ukraine updates. I believe we can sneak this all in here, hopefully. So the COVID updates here, COVID vaccine updates here. We're going to play a quick clip from NBC News.
Tonight, the FDA claiming without evidence that COVID shots are linked to at least 10 children's deaths and vowing new vaccine rules because of it. In an internal memo obtained by NBC News, the director of the FDA's vaccine division, Dr. Vinay Prasad, alleges no fewer than 10 deaths reported to the agency between 2021 and 2024 were related to the COVID vaccine.
It appears 10 deaths of children from the COVID shot. We're going to make that information available.
those cases were reviewed.
The memo did not include the children's ages or medical history, did not identify the vaccine manufacturer, and these findings have not been published in a peer-reviewed journal. An HHS spokesperson did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Experts maintain COVID vaccines are safe.
Parents can be confident in the safety of the COVID-19 vaccines.
But now, Dr. Prasad says the agency will change how it evaluates vaccines, including revising the annual flu vaccine framework. The memo says pneumonia vaccine makers will have to show their products reduce pneumonia rather than create antibodies alone.
They can just make it not a very good business proposition, and people will stop making vaccines.
The American Academy of Pediatrics telling us tonight they are concerned that the newly proposed requirements could limit children's access to safe, proven vaccines. More than 1 million Americans have died from COVID-19, including more than 2,000 children. The memo becoming public just before the CDC Vaccine Advisory Panel is set to discuss the childhood vaccine schedule and hepatitis B shot. Ryan.
Now, Alex, I have some thoughts, of course, but I wanted to hear your reaction to that news story first here.
Now, everybody knows that, well, everybody knows, not everybody knows that I don't have the highest esteem of Vinay Prasad. But, I mean, this is a JOKE. Are these people serious? Without evidence, we get a memo that was leaked from inside the FDA to us that was not intended but here we are having it, and we are saying that it was not peer reviewed.
You were hitting the same. You were hitting the same. You were hitting from the same direction I was, sir. Our minds are synced in this regard. That is exactly the direction.
It is after one too many Slenderman stories.
Well,
Gator.
Here's what I think here, sir. It's amazing how much they knee jerk, like the histamine response to the idea that there could have been someone harmed by the vaccines, okay, is astounding. If you would have had a memo that said there was 1,000 kids or 10,000 kids who died from COVID, okay, which is, over a period of time, perhaps you could eclipse that number. But in general, it was not that children in general, broadly speaking, did not die from COVID, right? They were very safe in that regard, right? Their mortality rate was exceptionally low. Finding instances of death among children is very difficult. But if you had a memo that would have said that, they wouldn't have said, without evidence, or the comorbidities weren't released of these children. Like, they would not be putting up this challenge.
Millions of deaths that are hypothetical based on an Excel model as fact when they say that the vaccine saved 20 million lives. Okay. These are 20 million hypothetical deaths that are averted if our math is correct in this here Excel sheet that assumes that the deaths would have kept growing in a linear fashion as they never have in history. And nobody bats an eyelid. What's next? Ukraine, Russia, sort of a draft treaty not peer reviewed? News at 11. What the fuck is wrong?
So I just find it fascinating that because there was a memo that said that 10 people, which let's assume that there's 10 legitimate cases. It's really easy to have those 10 cases.
It is. You don't really need to push me very hard to assume this. I can tell you for a fact that they can come up with 10 cases where the child died while being injected, like, or immediately thereafter. Like the cause and effect is about as tight as being shot, not having a shot, being shot.
So I wanted to compare and contrast that report there, where they get it, like you correctly, or in my estimation, because I felt the exact same way, point out that they got a leaked memo and start hyperventilating about, without evidence and things like that. Now, that was how they react to that memo from the FDA. But I want to remind people how they reacted to other things the FDA did during the COVID period.
It is medicine for horses, medicine for cows. But the Mississippi Poison Control Center has been pelted with calls from people taking ivermectin in a dangerous attempt to dodge COVID. And officials say 70% obtained the drug from animal supplies. 2 people hospitalized.
Why in the world would an individual would want to take a medication for livestock?
Officials say most of the reported cases have not been too serious, but they warn taking a dose intended for a 1,000-pound animal could lead to overdose, to seizures, coma, and even death. The FDA tweeting, "You are not a horse, you are not a cow. Seriously, y'all, stop it."
Let me just say very clearly that ivermectin is not a recommended treatment for COVID-19. It is not a recommended drug to prevent COVID-19.
Still, with the White House and so many health officials steadily encouraging legitimate, approved, free COVID vaccinations,
the sooner you get fully vaccinated, the sooner you'll be protected.
how has ivermectin come into play?
Ivermectin.
Right-wing media hosts have claimed it is widely used to prevent COVID hospitalizations and deaths. The same way some on the right encouraged wild hopes for cures based on UV light and hydroxychloroquine.
It's a potentially life-saving medicine that we are desperately trying to evaluate in the middle of a global pandemic.
And then President Trump embraced many of these quack remedies.
Then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that?
So that's a nice little trip down memory lane. Now, Alex, I actually used a little bit of AI technology here to ask Sora to reimagine that FDA horse, "You're not a horse" tweet in the style of their recent COVID vaccine memo story.
Tonight, the FDA is drawing attention for a tweet that simply states, quote, "You are not a horse. Stop it."
The agency offered the statement yesterday morning, but no data, study, or explanation accompanied it.
So yeah, if you did that tweet in the old style, with the new styling here of there was no evidence that you are not a horse, and they did not provide evidence to support this claim.
Don't you just love it where the whole this actually is a story that tells you everything you need to know in a very deep way, which is that these are the same people, right, that have been telling you for years that you need to trust the experts, the institutions, the authorities need to be preeminent in your epistemic framework. What the FDA says goes, okay, and you don't get to question that because you don't have the expertise, correct? And even if you were to find some doctor that would tell you otherwise, well, you are not in a position to pick the experts which you will use for that determination. And therefore,
Correct.
The best you can do is to trust the authorities, right? All of a sudden, right, what happened? Did they just fall down? They hit their head? How did they now start questioning authorities and doing their own research and finding their own experts and having opinions like this, right? Well, I think what's happening is you're seeing something which is hard to articulate, but clear as day, which is that, who is the regime is not who is sitting on the seat, right? Everybody knows that the people who are, the public health establishment are not necessarily the people who you see if you go and ask who is running the FDA right now. There is a sort of, the democratic sort of, shadow government effectively that is considered the true, owners of the administrative state. And they're the ones that we go to, regardless of what's happening at the top. That's just the thing that we ride over, we just wait it out. It's beautiful. It's just tremendous.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed that that recent update there, because I do think it does highlight exactly the
same as NATO, or the EU, and we're going to get to that as well, where they suddenly, when Trump is elected, the Europeans are get a spine and start pushing back and having their own opinions and things, and you're like, wow, I didn't know they could push back on the on what the United States wanted. And the correct answer to that analysis is they're not. They are continuing to do what they believe the permanent bureaucracy wants them to do. It just so happens that thing is to push back on the U.S. president.
Yes, correct. So now, in order to honor and respect time here, Alex, do you want to do Venezuela or Ukraine news first? You are muted, sir, if you are answering me. If you want to do Alex. Oh, no. You are still muted. Are we having technical difficulties with Alex? Okay, Alex, I'm going to start down Ukraine news here while you hopefully find out what's happening to your mute button here. So we have Ukraine peace talks shaken up by resignation of Zelensky's top aide and corruption probe. Just as peace talks were gaining traction, Alex, are you with us? I see you unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Okay, because I can't see anything. I still look muted. Anyway, I'm happy to go either way. I was going to go with Venezuela because we've talked about Ukraine a bunch, but whatever you want.
All right. We'll do Ukraine. Just as peace talks were gaining traction, Ukraine has lost its lead negotiator. Andriy Yermak, a ever-present figure at President Volodymyr Zelensky's side throughout the war with Russia, resigned as chief of staff on Friday after an anti-corruption raid at his home, injecting fresh uncertainty for Ukraine's leadership. The exit leaves a vacuum around Zelensky as talks accelerate, isolating the Ukrainian president at a critical moment and creating an opening Moscow may try to exploit, analysts say. The development capped the dramatic week, which began with Kiev under intense pressure from President Donald Trump to endorse a plan that aligned with Moscow's hardline demands. An initial deadline of Thursday imposed by the White House passed by without any announcement as Ukraine and its allies pushed back against calls for the country to cede territory. Ukrainian negotiators, led by Yermak, secured changes, and Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff will now head to Moscow for talks next week with President Vladimir Putin. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Friday that Russia still wants to move toward peace, despite its belief that Zelensky was not a legitimate leader. But analysts warn that Yermak's departure leaves Kiev navigating unfamiliar waters as Zelensky is forced to steer Ukraine through high-stakes negotiations without his most trusted aide. Yermak's resignation comes at a very bad time because we're really at a possible tipping point where what Ukraine is demanding may not be granted or taken into consideration. Michael Bakurev, a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center, told NBC News by phone on Saturday, quote, "None of us really know what Zelensky is like operating solo because he never has," he said, adding that Yermak has, quote, "basically stood in for Zelensky at many times." And we have lost Alex. Rustem Umerov, the secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, will lead Ukraine's delegation for a round of talks in the U.S. on Sunday, Zelensky said in a post on X. Umerov has also been mentioned by anti-corruption investigators. Neither he nor Yermak have faced charges. Bakrikov added that Yermak's departure would unlikely change Ukraine's firm stance on territorial secessions, but that Russia, quote, will try to manipulate and take advantage of this vacuum. Michael A. Horowitz, a Jerusalem-based geopolitical consultant, echoed Berkowicz's concern, saying that Yermak's resignation just days before major U.S.-Ukraine-Russia talks and a potential Trump-Putin summit, quote, disrupts Kiev's preparations and invites counterparts to probe whether Ukraine's red lines on territory and NATO can be eased during the transition. And Alex has returned. I'm going to re-invite him to co-host. But in the long term, Horowitz told NBC News on Saturday, Yermak's departure could even be positive. Critics have said for years that Yermak had accumulated too much power and wielded excessive influence over Zelensky, a constant presence by the president's side through the ups and downs of the war. Yermak had emerged as one of the few men that Ukrainian leader appeared to really trust. Zelensky had previously railed. Yes, I can. Previously railed. You're good?
Yes.
All right, against corrupt officials, but signs that a corruption scandal may have stretched into his inner circle may provide more ammunition to critics of further support for Ukraine. Trump-aligned figures, including Vice President J.D. Vance, have previously criticized Ukraine for its issues with corruption. Now, Alex, before we continue here, I would like to remind everybody that corruption was actually a large component of the first Trump administration in Ukraine, where Poroshenko had a corruption sort of scandal that wound up involving, his chief investigator that also wound up being involved with Burisma, where Joey was bragging to a panel that he actually got that investigator, axed because he threatened to not give them aid and things like that. So corruption has been a large portion of the Ukrainian story for, over the last 10 years and longer. And so like the fact that our side of the story here is, in the news in the United States is not hyping the fact that there is a brand new big corruption scandal kind of points to the fact that, they kind of are playing sides with whose corruption they actually are supposedly caring about.
I mean, wasn't it Rand Paul that had requested that some particular funding tranche had a condition that there would be an audit similar to what happened in Afghanistan, and everybody voted it down? I don't think
that sounds familiar. I don't remember the details off the top of my head here.
I remember it. So everybody knows basically. And by the way, this whole investigation was started by was activated. I think I told you a lot of these bits last week, but it was started by this corruption watchdog that hasn't really done much until now. Why it activated itself? Well, that's a question for hard solvers, advanced players.
Well, we're going to now move on to the article you sent me, Alex, here, which is the Witkoff advised Russia on how to pitch Ukraine plan to Trump. This is from Bloomberg. U.S. presidential envoy Steve Witkoff, fresh from the triumph of the Gaza peace deal, held a phone call last month with a senior Kremlin official to suggest they work together on a similar plan for Ukraine, and that Vladimir Putin should raise it with Donald Trump. On an October 14th call that lasted a little over 5 minutes, Witkoff advised Yuri Yushakov, Putin's top foreign policy aide, on how the Russian leader should broach the issue with Trump. His guidance included suggestions on Trump setting up a Trump-Putin call before Vladimir Zelensky White House visit later this week and using the Gaza agreement as a way in. Quote, "We put a 20-point Trump plan together. That was 20 points for peace, and I'm thinking maybe we do the same with you," Witkoff told Yushakov, according to a recording of the conversation reviewed and transcribed by Bloomberg. Asked about Witkoff's approach, Trump said he hadn't reviewed the call, but that he had heard was a standard negotiation. Quote, "He's got to sell this to Ukraine. He's going to sell Ukraine to Russia. That's what a deal maker does," Trump told reporters Tuesday. "You got to say, look, they may want this. You got to convince them of this." I would imagine he's saying the same thing to Ukraine because each party has to give and take. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov didn't immediately respond to comment. The conversation for the first time offers direct insight into Witkoff's recent tactics for negotiating with Russia and what appears to be the genesis of a 28-point peace proposal that emerged earlier this month, which is what the U.S. has pushed Ukraine to accept as the basis of the deal. Putin said this month he has believed the plan could be used as the basis for a peace settlement. He told senior officials at a meeting of the Russian Security Council that the 28-point plan had not been discussed in detail yet with the U.S., but that Moscow had received a copy of it. Trump said Tuesday he was directing Witkoff to meet with Putin in the hopes of finalizing a peace plan. The original 28-point peace plan, which was drafted by the United States, has been fine-tuned with additional input for both sides. And there are only a few remaining points of disagreement, the president said on Truth Social. At the time of the Witkoff-Yushakov call, Trump was basking in the success of his drive to end the war in Gaza. The day before, he had become the first U.S. president to address the Israeli Knesset since 2008 after securing the release of the final 20 living hostages held by Hamas. Trump's attitude towards Putin, however, appeared to be souring. As he prepared for his meeting with Zelensky on October 17th, he was considering providing Ukraine with longer-range Tomahawk missiles, discussing fresh sanctions on Russia and voicing his frustration with Putin. Quote, "I don't know why he continues with his war," Trump said on October 14th, the same day that Witkoff spoke to Yushakov. "He just doesn't want to end the war, and I think it's making him look very bad." During his call with Yushakov, Witkoff told his Russian counterpart that he had deep respect for Putin and that he had told Trump that it was his belief that Russia had always wanted a peace deal. The U.S. envoy mentioned Zelensky's upcoming visit and suggested that Putin could speak to Trump ahead of that meeting. Now, I have taken their transcript and recreated the conversation using 11 Labs, Alex, and I'm going to briefly play that so everyone can get a feel for what this conversation sounded like to some degree.
Hi, Yuri.
Yeah, Steve. Hi. How are you?
Good, Yuri. How you doing?
I am okay. Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you.
You made a great job. Just a great job. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuri, and thanks for your support. I know your country supported it, and I thank you.
Yes. You know, that's why we suspend the organization of First Russian-Arabic Summit.
Yes.
Yeah, because we think that you are making the real job there in the region.
Well, listen, I am going to tell you something. I think if we can get the Russia-Ukraine thing solved, everybody will be jumping for joy.
Yeah, you need to solve only one problem. Haha.
What?
Russian-Ukrainian war.
I know. How do we get that solved?
My friend, I just want your advice. Do you think that it will be useful if our bosses will talk on the phone?
Yes, I do.
You do? And when you think it could be possible?
I think as soon as you suggest, my guy is ready to do it.
Okay.
Yuri, here's what I would do. My recommendation.
Yes, please.
I would make the call and just reiterate that you congratulate the president on this achievement, that you supported it, that you respect that he is a man of peace, and you're really glad to have seen it happen. So I would say that. I think from that, it's going to be a really good call. Because, let me tell you what I told the president. I told the president that the Russian Federation has always wanted a peace deal. That's my belief. I told the president I believe that, and I believe the issue is that we have two nations that are having a hard time coming to a compromise, and when we do, we're going to have a peace deal. I'm even thinking that maybe we set out like a 20-point peace proposal, just like we did in Gaza. We put a 20-point Trump plan together that was 20 points for peace, and I'm thinking maybe we do the same thing with you. My point is this.
Okay, my friend. I think that very point our leaders could discuss. Hey, Steve, I agree with you that he will congratulate. He will say that Mr. Trump is a real peace man, and so. That he will say.
But here's what I think would be amazing.
Okay.
What if, hear me out.
I will discuss that with my boss, and then I come back to you. Okay?
Yeah, because listen to what I'm saying. I just want you to say, maybe just to say this to President Putin, because you know I have the deepest respect for President Putin.
Yes.
Maybe he says to President Trump, you know, Steve and Yuri discussed a very similar 20-point plan to peace, and that could be something that we think might move the needle a little bit. We're open to those sorts of things, to explore what it's going to take to get a peace deal done. Now, me to you, I know what it's going to take to get a peace deal done. Donetsk, and maybe a land swap somewhere. But I'm saying instead of talking like that, let's talk more hopefully, because I think we're going to get to a deal here. And I think Yuri, the president, will give me a lot of space and discretion to get to the deal.
I see.
So if we can create that opportunity that after this, I talked to Yuri and we had a conversation, I think that could lead to big stuff.
Okay, that sounds good.
And here's one more thing. Zelensky is coming to the White House on Friday.
I know that.
I will go to that meeting because they want me there, but I think if possible, we have the call with your boss before that Friday meeting.
Before, yeah?
Correct.
Okay. I got your advice. So I discuss that with my boss, and then I come back to you, okay?
Okay, Yuri, I'll speak to you soon.
Great.
Now, I was blown away by that conversation, Alex. You know, let's have a plan to discuss having a proposal for a plan that might be 20 points, because we did a 20-point plan somewhere else. And if we have 20 points here, that's going to be like the same sort of thing, right? So if we discuss having a plan, you know, and you remind Putin that I was involved and that you're really happy with me, what is this? Alex, what on earth?
Well, look, there's a slightly better way to say it, which is that if you focus on the fact that there is potential, there's a team here that could bring the prize home, right? That the Russians feel like there's somebody in the U.S. that they can work with and they can talk to, and that, you know, recent achievements maybe have increased that sort of willingness to work with that person. And that the focus is on that we can make a deal rather than on, you know, hard, you know, concessions are required. There might be more willingness to engage and more energy coming out the other side.
The reason the reason that's not the impression I get is because that's the way that Trump has been talking the entire time since before the election, is about, you know, a deal. Like, so I imagine that these types of conversations happen all the time in back channels. And so that this particular instance of a transcript just seems like so superficially vapid. Like, it's all There's nothing. There's no content. Like, it's just
no. You see, they're saying that this is evidence that Witkoff is conspiring with the Russians to manipulate Trump. That's the angle, and that therefore the deal that is being. Oh, you did not realize this?
I mean, I knew there was this standard filleting being discussed in here about how to hey, just say really good things. Everybody stay positive. But that's, that didn't, it didn't seem like very, it wasn't even the level. It wasn't even the level, Alex, of Michael Wolff's email to Jeffrey Epstein about how to manipulate Trump, right? There were actual
the level of the what was it, Bermudian? No, what's her Virgin Island delegate asking for questions.
It was there was no content in here. Like saying, hey, butter Trump up and say positive things is standard fucking. Okay, continue. Tell me how this is being interpreted, because I am very dumb to this.
And what's more, even though if you actually read the material, and I actually love what you did here, by the way, this is, conveying reality by way of forgery, but it works. It's very, very clear who came up with the idea of having this number of points plan, and who was taking the lead and making it happen, right? Witkoff. Mm-hmm. What they're saying is that this is a plan that's written by the Russians. In fact, there was this fucking ridiculous story about how the grammar in certain sentences was such that it was leading them to believe it might have been translated from the original Russian. I shit you not. Because Witkoff does not know how to rephrase things in English, apparently. Witkoff, right? Off. So it must be Russian. Anyway, I don't know, man. Like it is. But sorry, it is wild, and there's a lot of laughing to do. But I think there's something really important here. This is the U.S. president's representative in conducting negotiations between nuclear-armed countries, the two most nuclear-armed countries in the world. Okay, this is not. It sounds jovial and whatever, but this is not a joke. And somebody is not happy about it and is leaking recordings of said conversations in an attempt to put a sort of a what is it, a spoke in the hub, no wheel, like I don't know, whatever. Try to sabotage those negotiations. This is very much a Trump impeachment one, Russiagate style operation that we've seen before, where some unnamed power somewhere, but powerful enough clearly to be monitoring the communication of those people, is in possession of that information and chooses to leak it. This is beyond sort of just leaking classified information, by the way. This is like one of the highest leaking crimes you can do in the US. I don't remember what the classification exactly is. Greenwald did the precise analysis, but there's some level of leaking of these kind of highly sensitive negotiations. That is one of the most serious offenses in regards to leaking you can do. But of course nobody cares, nobody's asking, nobody's interested in how this information got out. How come top people in the entire planet cannot have a conversation without being eavesdropped and that being sent to Bloomberg?
A very anyway. Odd outlet to release it to, but
yeah,
not.
I don't know. I mean, the Russians are blaming the Brits, but then again, the Brits is like a generic term.
Well, I mean, anyone involved in Five Eyes could be.
That's right. That's exactly what I mean. It's like they could have been told by anybody else, or they could have been given the recording to leak by anybody else. So it's very hard to know who's behind it. All we know is that there seems to be a real potential here for this thing to be impactful, which is why you see like absolutely wild flailing about by all sorts of forces, known and unknown.
Okay. Alex, do you want to attempt to sneak in the clip that you had me excerpt from the other podcast for Venezuela. Okay. I'll sneak that in here now.
I mean, he gave a great sort of summary so I thought instead of me giving you a bad version of it,
right.
we might play. This is from Alexander Mercouris.
Yes, I'll sneak this in. I'll sneak this in here at the wire, and I'll increase the playback speed so that if people increase the playback speed of our podcast, they will be super speedy on this particular clip.
So briefly, the President of the United States and Truth Social has essentially announced the closure of space. He's made comments about how this is intended to act against drug smugglers and traffickers and people of that kind. But if you read his post carefully, it seems to me that he clearly leaves open the possibility of a military attack by the United States against Venezuela with the intention of overthrowing the Venezuelan government. And interestingly, the Truth Social post also seems to open up the possibility for some kind of operation on land, that is to say, in Venezuelan territory itself. Now, this comes after reports have appeared in the US media of a conversation between President Maduro of Venezuela and President Trump of the United States, which apparently took place a number of days ago, over the course of which, apparently, according to the Wall Street Journal, President Trump told President Maduro to resign and indicated that if President Maduro did not resign, the United States might take military action to remove him. And in addition to these various signs that the United States is preparing for military action, there were reports late yesterday evening in the media that US aircraft are now very active, flying around Venezuelan territory, and also the well-known hawk, neocon, person who is played a major role in US Latin American policy for decades. I can remember him being active in the 1980s when he was running policy in Central America, in El Salvador and Nicaragua on behalf of President Reagan. Anyway, this gentleman, Elliot Abrams, who was also working for President Trump during Trump's first term, has written a very belligerent article in which he basically says that there would be no problems overthrowing the government of President Maduro, and all of the worries that people have are completely wrong, and it is absolutely something that the United States must do, should do, and must do. That at least is the way I read that article. Now, given that Elliot Abrams has worked for Trump in the past, given the role he has played in US foreign policy in Latin America, given the fact that I believe that he has connections with the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, though I'm not absolutely sure about this, but that's what I've heard, I suspect this article is intended, again, to prepare the ground for this military operation, which is to come. So all of the indications point to a military operation by the United States being prepared, and one which will be shortly underway. And certainly the United States now has enormous striking power in the region of Venezuela. We have 7 Iceberg destroyers with apparently 250 Tomahawk cruise missiles between them. We have the Gerald Ford, which is America's most modern and biggest and most powerful aircraft carrier. We have F-35 fighter jets positioned in various bases around Central America, including Puerto Rico. There's amphibious warfare ships in the area too. And, well, it is highly likely, though, of course, this we don't know about, that the CIA is active within Venezuela itself. I've been told so, and I believe so. And I've no doubt that all kinds of preparations and work to conduct a military operation in Venezuela have been underway for some time. And, well, there have been other signs too that the President Donald Trump's focus is increasingly on Latin America. He has recently pardoned the former president of Honduras, Mr. Hernandez, who has been convicted and has been serving his prison sentence in the United States for massive drug smuggling into the United States whilst he was president of Honduras. And he has actively supported, openly supported, a candidate in the election, the current presidential elections that are taking place in Honduras.
Now, Alex, you may not know this, but I have some good news for you. I hadn't listened to the clip when you asked me to take this earlier today. I sort of just blindly accepted your request and did it. But all of the articles that he had mentioned and discussed, I actually had in the stack today. So
it was a good clip. It was
your clip knocked out all the things I would have been reading. So that was very nice to do the high level thing. I've attached them all to the thread.